anyone that's been following me for, the last 5 years, let's just say, right, knows that like I will take a swap and put it in a random car. Like I've done crazy swaps and builds. So like, I was known for being able to, do something like that.
If you're into Hondas and love the Street Alpha podcast, check out our exclusive Honda t-shirts, now available with a hoodie option too. Hit the link below to grab yours today. Welcome back to another episode of the Street Alpha podcast. I'm your host, Tukes, and today we are upstate New York. We have the pleasure of hanging out with my guy, Ricardo of RPT Creations. You guys have seen him with plenty of 4G63 swaps in his Civics, or who even knows what he has now. He has K-Series swaps. He just broke the record recently with his Mini Cooper, which is a super unique build. This is your only one, or you had multiple?
I have a few more, but this is the only running one at the moment.
Yeah, so he just broke the record on New Year's, actually.
So
congrats to you on that. And we're going to get into basically what his future journey is going to be with this car and other platforms. And as you guys see behind me, we also have Evo that apparently he just picked up as well. So we'll talk about that. I know you guys have seen some of his street races from back in the day, and one of the most controversial ones where he raced Frustrate and got into an accident. So you guys have seen the videos of that as well. But this man, I would consider a legend because you've been doing this for quite some time and you've done some unique builds, and you also educate people on how to do these. And you also create kits to be able to have people put these K-Series in pretty much any chassis, or at least the chassis that you've had them in, right?
Yep. I do them for a fair, good amount of cars. Mini Coopers, SRT4s, and more to come, but I'll keep that there for now.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack. But before we start, let's give a round of applause for Ricardo of RPT Creations. Yeah. Cool. So I'm happy that we are actually finally getting to sit here. We've been talking back and forth for a while. I know we wanted to do this episode, and I think you had a garage you're working on, right? Or something you're building?
I am, yeah. Unfortunately, it was supposed to break ground, but it's been a little bit delayed with some stuff, but we found another alternative, so got to make it work.
Yeah, we had to make it work somehow. So one of the things that I want to know, and I'm sure your fans want to know, is what your inspiration was for choosing the 4G platform. You have had that motor in a couple of different chassis, and one of the most unique ones being the Civic. So it seems like you have this love for the 4G63. What was your inspiration for getting into that platform?
So honestly, can thank my father for that.
Okay.
He started early in his teens working on cars at a local automotive shop. And just, growing up, getting close to my teens too, I would say I probably, as far back as I can remember, maybe at like 11, 12 years old, I would be more involved in the shop with him. Yeah. And he kind of, paved the way for me, kind of teaching me what he knew. At that young age, there's only so much that I can, learn.
Yeah, you could,
but over the years, I've gotten more and more into it, and he was really the inspiration towards, getting into cars in general. And he owned first gen Eclipse, a Mitsubishi Eclipse, a GSX, so it's all-wheel drive turbo. I wouldn't say that was the start of me getting into the 4G63s, but it kind of, shed some light into those cars. And then, the DSMs for me came a couple of years later on down the line after that.
And were you born in the States, or?
No, originally I was born in Portugal.
Okay.
My family came over when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and we, settled, and I grew up in Yonkers, which a lot of people are, familiar. I mean, if you know some background on a lot of our, influencers today, YouTubers, rest in peace, Rob Maps, grew up in Yonkers too. Aki, a lot of people from, Yonkers with the whole, racing scene.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it all started for all of us.
And back in Portugal, were there a lot of imports over there? Like, or did you see any domestic stuff growing up? Like, what made you kind of gravitate more towards the import side?
Truthfully, I was too young. I don't really remember. I just know my dad has owned a couple minis himself, like classic Austin minis back in the day. But just from photographs is all I can remember. I don't have any memories of it. But as far as like domestics, they never really had that. It was mainly just, your typical Audi, Volkswagen, Alfa Romeos. Those are the popular cars there.
When did you start getting, interest into, mechanically or working on cars?
I was about, might sound crazy, but I was about 13 years old, I want to say. I was working with my father at the shop, like I said, learning, turning retros. I got my first car at like 13 years old. It was a 2000 Ford Focus that he bought. And it was kind of our little project to like kind of, have a bond together with. And it was a total little Ford Focus, and we rebuilt it together. And that was like, my first car that I really got to, put hands on and actually, build something.
Yeah.
We ended up taking a turbocharger that we had laying around the shop from a 3000 GT. He made some weird custom manifold to bolt it up. And, that's what really pushed me. That was like, I would say, the initial start, getting into the cars pretty actively was, being hands-on with my father, learning.
And then you made, so I'm assuming at some point, because it was a 4-cylinder, you kind of made the switch easily to a 4G. Like how'd you get your hands on a 4G to start working on them?
So right before I got into the 4G, I actually got into a Honda. So after we got rid of that Ford Focus, my father had got me a Honda Prelude. So that was nice. My first Honda, was a Honda Prelude H23. Nothing crazy. I had bought it with just bolt-ons. It was like, I think, intake header and exhaust. That was short-lived too. I mean, I was, even now I still have a problem. Like if you follow me, I don't keep anything for too long. I'm always buying and selling, building, racing, and on to the next. So that started at a young age. But right after that Honda Prelude, going into it for, a couple of years in high school. And again, being in Yonkers, I mean, all you saw was basically Hondas. Like the import scene, it was all Hondas, few Mitsubishis, and that was it. But once I got rid of the Honda, there was, I remember, an Eclipse, a local black Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX. He lived a block away from me.
2G?
And 1G.
Oh, 1G, okay.
A 1G Eclipse. And I would always hear it ripping up and down the road every time he would start it up. And that is what literally drove my attention into the Mitsubishis. I didn't know too much about them. I was still young. But I will never forget that Mitsubishi. That's what did it for me. Just hearing that blow-off valve go off, the exhaust. Oh, man. It just did it. It was like something different. It was new. It was like, what's this weird noise coming out of the hood? Yeah. So that's what gained my attraction. And then part of like what got me really into the Mitsubishis, and also what also got me into like the local, racing scene was one of my boys, Eric E-Money. He was a big Honda head. He knew all the Honda dudes around. He was street racing at the time. And once I got connected and met with him, that's what drove me into the Eclipse. He knew the guy with that 1G Eclipse. Yeah. And I would go and, ask him questions about the car, and I want one so bad. So he was actually the one that started searching for an Eclipse for me. And that's what really got my attention with the Mitsubishi community.
What's crazy is that, and what year was this?
If I remember correctly, it must have been like 2005.
So this is post Fast and Furious and all that stuff.
Yeah, high school.
High school. Yeah. When I was younger, that's actually what got me into cars too. So I lived next to a car wash, and I would always hear cars coming in. So I feel like nowadays, you don't really have that anymore. Like one of the most popular sounds I used to hear was STI. Yep. Like the STI. Unique sound. And which now it's like, you hear it's like not as exciting anymore. Yeah. But back then, man, like the way that car sounded was so unique. And then also people don't really speak about it much, but there was the R32, the Volkswagen, which had a unique sound too. And those cars that sounded the best to me, I always wanted to get into. And those are the cars that I always wanted to get. But I ended up with a Honda. So. Which I ain't knocking, but like, those are cars you always look up to, Yeah.
So I would say the majority of us in the car community have owned a Honda at one point or another. So,
no, absolutely. Yeah. Like that was like the first car I had, and then I kept going with that. But so now you were in the scene then. You were like, that's prime time right there. 05, 06. Yeah. That was like when everything was like.
That's when it was heavy.
Yeah.
That's when I wasn't engaged too much at that point. Into the whole racing. I mean, it was a learning curve for me. Yeah. At that point, I was just, listening, watching, following along. But nowhere in the competitive stage yet. Yeah. No shit talking at that time, no nothing. Just taking it all in and trying to absorb as much as I can and just following their footsteps and learning.
So who was the main guy that like you were looking at and saying like, all right, this is who I need to watch because he's doing this thing in the streets right now where he's got a fast car, like, or who can you pull inspiration from? Like, who was that guy?
So in high school, there was a couple. Like I said, Rob Maps. I remember at the time he had a red EG hatch on I think red Slipstreams.
Damn,
Run
Slipstreams.
run around Yonkers. At the time, I mean, again, now we say 400 horsepower. It's like it's nothing, but
Yeah.
at the time, you know, I think he was like around 400 to on that hatch, and you know
That's what he said it was, or that's what, you know.
Yeah, you know how it goes. I mean, that's what I was told at the time. That was a rumor. But I mean, him going around, I mean, he was pretty active on the streets with that car. Like I said, Aki, he was rolling around. My boy E-Money, like I said, there was a bunch of Honda heads, you know. If you ever heard of Alante Racing, they were pretty big during that time too. There were a lot of people that you know I looked up to that kind of inspired me into the whole racing aspect of the cars, not just, you know, wrenching on them and making them look cool.
Right. So now I'm sure at some point you decided to say, you know, I want to make my car go much faster than what it is, right? You have this car, and did you like take the risk to kind of pull a motor out and put a different one in? Like, what made you want to take the risk or the jump to start working on your car and taking it apart and trying to figure out things and make it go faster?
I mean, honestly, I feel like it's even what we deal with now. Like, I feel like it's never enough. No matter what you do, like the horsepower is just, you get used to it, and then you want more. You always want more. Or someone is faster, and now you got to be more, you know, competitive and be faster than him. So it was always, I would just say, you know, back then, again, I wasn't like too crazy into it, like the horsepower. I was still learning everything at a young age. But just seeing everyone, you know, doing what they were doing and trying to find out what setup they were running. I mean, back then, again, everything was like a super secret. Like, ain't nobody popped your hood. If you had your hood open and you came around, people were closing their hoods and trying to see who was trying to, you know, lurk around. It was different back then. I mean, now, you know, I could be wrong, but nowadays you have your hood pop. It's just like, it is what it is. Like, you go to the track, like not many people hiding it like they used to. But, you know, I would say like when I really got into it was a DC2 Integra. It was a 95 Integra that I had. Stock LS. The guys that I was hanging out with got me into, you know, getting a turbo kit. Bought a turbo kit off of eBay, slapped it on, and now I started having those sounds that I fell in love with. And, you know, from there, you know how it is. Again, you do one little thing and it breaks, you try to improve it. Or, you know, you slap a turbo and now it's like, all right, well, I'm only at 6 pounds of boost at the time. What can I do to make it go 10 pounds and, you know, go quicker? So it was just like a learning curve, and it's just always, you know, it's never enough. It goes back to it. You always want more and more.
It's crazy because I think these are some of the things that I used to hear back then was, you know, you shouldn't, well, on an LS it's low compression. That was one of the things they used to say back then. So you can turbo that and you should be fine with that. More the lower compression stuff. And we spoke about this in the last episode with a lot of the higher compression stuff not being able to be turbocharged. But it's crazy how things have changed from all those myths or misconceptions back then to now and how technology has changed.
It's true. It is. And I did listen to that podcast, and it, you know, it brought back memories. You know, back in the day, you wanted as low as a compression. I remember on the DSMs, people going, you know, 7/8 to 1, I believe, compression pistons just to be able to send, you know, 30 pounds of boost. Now we're doing that, you know, 10 to 1, 11 to 1 compression on turbo cars. You know, the fuel has a lot to do with it, but yeah, it's crazy how, you know, looking back and how we used to do things to now, it's completely different.
So what do you think that so I know you said fuel is probably one of the main things that has to do with that, which it technically does, because I don't even think there was no E85 back then, I don't think, right?
Not that I can recall. Not that far back.
What has changed aside from just fueling that, you know, makes us run boost on high compression motors?
Honestly, I'm going to say technology.
Just
you know,
overall
the big key word is just technology. You know, the ECUs have become much more advanced. You know, we have way better fuels that are capable of, you know, sending all this boost and all this power without detonation. You know, there's a lot of factors. I mean, honestly, it all comes down to the tuner too. You know, I mean, you can have the best setup in the entire world. If your tuner is not on point, he doesn't know what he's doing, you know, that's it. What are you going to do at that point? It's too late. There's no undo button or rewind, you know. It's start from scratch again. So definitely, like even now, I mean, even back then and now, I would say a big key factor is your tuner. Tuner is gonna make or break your car.
Yeah. I mean, everybody says that, and it's true.
It's true.
It's like there's no other, unless you want to be controversial, but like, no, there's no way to get controversial with that.
It's that simple.
Yeah. Have you ever had a single cam?
I have.
You have?
You
know, single cams don't get no love on this podcast. And I had a couple single cams too. And I always wanted to boost one. People are like, yo, they'll blow up if you even try to boost them. But people have had some success with like those Vitara pistons and shit like that.
I've had my fair share of single cams, and my boy Eric, he's the one that got me into the single jingles at the time and turboing them. I mean, we would take stock motors.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you ever heard of the mini swap.
Yeah.
That was a big thing back in the day. You know,
I haven't heard that
non-VTEC block. Yeah, that's back in the day. Shows my age, but
damn.
Non-VTEC blocks, slap a VTEC head on it, throw a turbo kit. I mean, people were making 300 wheel all day on a stock motor.
On a single. Yeah, I mean, they don't even, man. Honestly, I'm thinking about building one. I feel like, I feel like that's a good I feel like that's a good platform if you want to because I want to learn how to tune a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a perfect platform to kind of learn on. Not saying that, it's a crappy motor, but like if you blow up a single cam, I'm sure you can just swap another one in. Right?
They're getting harder to find, but yeah. Ultimately, I mean, I don't know. Seeing how they started back in the day to, I forgot the guy's name, but I remember seeing last year. I don't know if he's went any faster, but I know that there's a single cam Civic running out there, competitive at the track.
Okay.
You've probably seen it. I think last I checked, he was low eights trying to go into the sevens in a single cam. I could be wrong, but I believe it was like an 8.3 or so that I last saw. I don't know if he's gotten any faster.
Out of a single all-wheel drive?
Out of single cam. I think front wheel drive. I don't know too much specifics with it, but
interesting. Yo, that's crazy.
Yeah. If I had to imagine, it's got like a D to B kit, so it's probably running a B series transmission because those single cams, I'd break them all the time. All the time. They would not last.
Those are shitty. Yeah.
We were swapping those transmissions left and right.
I mean, it's fun. It's fun when you have it back then. But now it's like the amount of money these cars have and what people put into them to race them at the track. Like you got to have some serious shit for that, for sure. That's wild though. I think is it a blue one? Is it a blue Civic?
I don't remember the color. I don't even want to throw false information out there.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. But I definitely got to get some single cam guys on the podcast. Yeah, because that platform is definitely it needs some more love for sure.
No, it does.
So now you started messing around with the 4G. Obviously, like you said, most people, they get a car, they want to go faster, they start messing around with stuff. Did you switch platforms after that?
So after my little fair share of Honda and that DSM, the DSMs, I got into Toyota MR2.
The white, was it the white one or it was a different one?
It was a white one, but not the white one that you're thinking of because that was only just a few years ago.
Right.
I would say my first MR2, this was 2006. I want to say 2006, 2007. I got my first MR2. Again, it was crashed in the front, considered total because one of the frame rails got bent a little bit. But my father, he grew up doing the mechanics in the automotive, but he also did body work. So he was able to fix it up. We reconstructed it. Still had a clean title. It was never reported, but ended up getting it. It was like $6,000 at the time. And it was a factory turbocharged model. And so I got into the MR2s for a little bit. Didn't last too long. Like it was fun and all, but I didn't have anyone around that knew much about them to like really do anything with it. Knowledge is everything. So at the time, there was really no one that I can remember running an MR2 at the time. So, it was cool. It was fun. It was a mid-engine. It had a lot of fun with it, but it was short-lived. And then, I got back into Mitsubishi after that car.
Did you ever experience I think is it oversteer in that car? Or
I know I haven't had that issue much with the newer MR2s that I've recently had, but I do remember that being a thing with them.
Yeah, because the motor being in
the mid-engine platform.
Right. I know that's one of the popular things or not popular, but that's one of the things that is most common with that platform.
Yep.
And it's funny because Kyle, Boosted Boys, has one, and he's flying with that car. But like that doesn't seem to be any issue with that. You know what I'm saying?
No, not anymore. I mean, he's down to 7.5, 7.4.
Yeah.
On that MR2. Yeah.
It's great.
He's definitely an inspiration for the MR2 community.
Yeah. So, but at the time, did you ever think about maybe putting a different motor in it? Because
Nope. The whole engine swaps came way later on.
And did you ever have a B series at all, or?
I did. Well, I had the LS that I mentioned with the Integra.
Right.
And then I had a few B series after that. But to be honest with you, thinking back now, I've probably had more single cams than B series. There was just something about, I've always been a turbo guy. I've had my fair share. I've tried all motor. I always go back to boost. To me, there's just nothing like boost. So to me, getting a single cam for a couple $100 and slapping a turbo kit on it was just a more financial way to go about it at the time. I was in high school. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a job. So, the little cars that I was flipping with my dad, like that's what funded it.
Yeah. And what you doing, eBay kits?
Yeah, eBay. Yeah. At the time, I don't even remember it. I think Turbonetics was out at the time and stuff.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Turbonetics was pretty big, but I couldn't afford that. So to me, it was like an eBay turbo kit was $500 at the time.
Was CX Racing still a thing?
CX Racing, yep, that was them.
Yeah, CX Racing, I remember.
Yeah, they would put them budget, China turbo kits. I mean, hey, I can't really knock it. I mean, for dollar for what you got, it did its job. It didn't last too long, but
yeah,
they worked.
Do you think that maybe today's turbo kits from eBay are better than what they were back then?
They are, and I think a part of it is just the way technology has came to. I mean, not trying to knock so much, but they had advanced as well.
Yeah.
Over the years. But I mean, there's plenty of people that are still running. I mean, obviously they took a different round. They're, more serious into the racing, but like Kyle from Boosted Boys,
yeah,
they've always, their entire YouTube channel, you look at it from when they started up until like a couple of years ago. They're always running like, eBay knockoff turbos and they work. I mean, look at his EK hatch. I think he went like 10s or even 9s on an eBay turbo. I mean, can you really knock it?
It's crazy.
On a budget sometimes.
I wonder, but sometimes I think maybe it's just because some of these people or the companies that are making some of these parts, they're like doing side jobs or something like that. Maybe they're like making the parts or they're getting, how like the materials and still making them and just selling them cheaper or something like that. Because they can technically.
Yeah. Listen, I don't want to say too much and I'm not going to expose any companies, but all I can say is a lot of the companies and a lot of the manufacturers that you see out here selling these products, not all, but the majority of the stuff is produced in China and then sent over here.
I've heard this plenty of times, but then it's like not everything is 100% made in the U.S.
No, absolutely.
So there has to be some involvement for some of those parts to kind of be manufactured because we can't get everything here, and also the cost is going to be probably a lot higher.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's still a lot that's being manufactured here in the U.S.
Right.
But there are the companies that are producing parts that are, outsourcing from overseas. I mean, it's the name of the game. It is what it is. I mean, like we live in a society now where like, everyone's having, not everyone, but the majority of us middle class, like we're all, hurting for money. It is what it is. Like everything is cost and everything is up. There's no denying that. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we do tend to budget, and when you go budget or try to take some shortcuts, I guess, so to speak, you're going to look elsewhere, and there's just no competition overseas. Like we can't make anything here in the USA compared to what they can overseas. Quality might not be the same, but there's still, even me, I'll be the first one to admit it. I run a lot of knockoff parts. I pick and choose. I know what I can get away with and what I can't. But me personally, I have all these high horsepower builds. There's still a lot of knockoff parts.
Like give me an example of some knockoff parts.
All right, one that my Evo,
okay,
the latest blue Evo that I had, other than this one, the one right before, or the carbon one, the 2 blowout valves on there. I was running a dual blowout valve system. They were both, and they even stamp tile right on it, and it's knockoff eBay blowout valves.
Yo, that's with the tile on it?
Yeah, with the tile on it.
Oh man!
You go on eBay right now and you type in tile wastegate, let's say whatever. 44 millimeters, 60, even wastegates. I mean, whatever you want. The wastegates, blow-off valves I've seen. That's why you got to be real careful on the used marketplace. You got to know what you're looking for.
And it's identical.
You put them side by side, you can see the slight differences in the billet casting. So if they're side by side.
Okay.
If you're on marketplace searching for a blow-off valve or a wastegate, and unless you know what you're looking at. Like I have the experience because I've already dealt with the both in my hands.
Right.
I can distinguish the two, but your typical ordinary person that's looking to build their car and they're trying to, budget and look for used parts, they'll see the tile on and think it's like a real tile blow-off valve or something, and it's really a knockoff. So, you got to be careful. Do they work? I've ran it. Thankfully, luckily, I've never had any failures with them except for like a small leak in one over the course of like 2 years.
Okay.
But, I mean, you're also paying like $50 brand new for this blow-off valve.
What?
So, and again, I'm not telling everyone now that don't mistake this for me saying go and buy your knockoff blow-off valve, But again, if you're on a budget, there's certain parts that you can, cheap out on.
Why did you choose why choose the blow-off valve to cheap out on though? Is it because you don't feel like you should pay a lot of money for it, or?
I'll be honest. What led me to do that at first was I needed a blow-off valve. The one that the actual tile authentic didn't have it in stock. And it was at the time, for whatever reason, couldn't get my hands on it for like 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
So I tried to look at other options, and I went on eBay and happened to find a knockoff. And I said, you know what, for now, let me get this. I'll try it. And then when the authentic one comes in, I'll just swap them out. I ran it just to, test it. Like, a lot of people know, like, I have no problem testing parts out. Like, I'll be the guinea pig. I don't mind it.
Yeah.
Like, I've never been, and I could thank my father for it, I've never been like much of a follower and do everything that I see someone else doing. I'll take bits and pieces and knowledge and learn from it, but I like to pay my own way. I like to try my own thing. So if there's something new that someone has an idea and hasn't tested it, I'll grab it and run with it. Yeah. And I'll try it. A lot of the times it doesn't always work. It's just part of it. But I feel like, when someone comes up with something and it becomes a wave and everyone runs it, uses it, it's because someone actually took the courage to try it and see if it worked.
That's true.
If we're all going to be afraid and wait for someone else to do it, imagine what doesn't get done.
That's true.
So again, I tried it. It's worked, and it's been working for a year. I still buy the authentic stuff. Yeah. But certain builds, like this one, the Mini Cooper, that's got a knockoff blow-off valve in it. If it was easy to access, I would show you. But, that's running on a knockoff blow-off valve. And to me, it was like, this isn't a super, I'm not going for sevens. I'm not going for, although I did get the record wasn't anything crazy. Yeah. So certain things I budgeted on, in the blow-off valve being one of them, only because of my past experiences, knowing that it works. Right. Until it doesn't work, wwhy am I going to change it?
That's true. That's true. I would think
like, what do they say? If it ain't broken, don't fix it, right? Yeah. To me, luckily, I've gotten away with, the knockoff blow-off valves.
Is that the only thing that you use? Have you ever tried turbos?
I've done
nowadays.
Nowadays, no.
Okay.
Nowadays, no, only because I've taken my projects and racing more serious, and I want them to last. And you don't want to cheap out on a turbo. I've seen them now like as low as like $150. I don't know what power they'll put down, but you can get a turbo that cheap from eBay, slap it on. But it's like, do you really want that failing on, you spend like $5,000 building your motor, or even more. I mean, that's on the low end, but do you want a couple $100 turbo ruining that? To me, it's not worth it, at least not for the builds that I do now. I make decent money now, so I can afford to spend the extra money on a legitimate turbo. But, back then, I did run knockoff stuff more so than real. Yeah. And, it's how a lot of us start.
So let's say there's, somebody who's watching this video, they have maybe a Honda, or they have any, let's say if they have a RSX or a Civic maybe, and they want to make some power with this car, right? So what would you recommend for somebody if they want to, get some power and maybe make 500 horsepower?
Honestly, like, I'm going to be biased on this because I love turbo, but you can make it on an all motor. But I think for what you're getting out of, out of the setup, I think turbo is obviously the easiest bang for your buck. It's the easiest and the quickest way to, achieve that 500 horsepower, let's just say, if we're using that number. Turbo is going to be the quickest way. If you're doing an all motor build, even on a K series, trying to get 400 or 500 wheel, you're going to have to build it top to bottom and spend a good amount of money to all motor to put down the power. nowadays, especially if we're speaking specifically with the K series,
Yeah.
there are guys making 500-600 horsepower plus on a completely stock K series out of a junkyard. You know, there's so many people, I don't even have to like tell you who. There's so many people. It's been proven for many, many years.
Yeah.
You could take a junkyard K series, throw it in the car, throw a little turbo kit on it, and you're making your 500 on pump gas. Like the ingredients are there. Like there is no secret about it.
Yeah. So now, because honestly, I'm thinking about Hondas they're pretty cheap, man. Not gonna lie. And that was my first car, but I've gotten away from the Honda stuff just because, you know, I took a break from the car game. But look at the prices. Like I'm on Marketplace and I'm like, damn, you can get like a EK coupe for like cheap, man, cheap. So I'm like, maybe I get one of those and pick up a K series and throw it in there. But I'm so out of touch with what's going on and what parts are available now that it's kind of like a little overwhelming. You have to kind of do research. But figured I have you here. You can kind of explain, right? So let's say I had an EK coupe or something like that. Like you said, you were breaking it down for people who are trying to get into stuff. And I picked up a K series motor and I throw it in the car. What other parts am I going to need? Like injectors, aside from the turbo, what else am I going to need to make this power? Computer? Can I make that on a stock computer? Like what do I need?
So honestly, like people ask me all the time, you know, we'll get into it later, but like as far as like I make the mini kits and it's, you know, revolving around K series. So I get asked all the time, like, you know, what do I need to make X amount or what do I need to this? And I always tell people before you try to, you know, buy any parts, set out a goal for yourself. Like what is your intentions with the car, with the build? Start with that, find out where you want to go and what direction you want with the car, because that's going to dictate what parts you're going to have to look for if you want to save in the long run, you know. And I've done it myself so many times. Like I won't set out a goal. I'll just start buying parts and then I'll have to change the setup because it's not what I wanted, or this part, like let's say a fuel injector wasn't big enough to achieve this goal. So like set out a goal, figure out what you want, and then go from there. Because especially with the Honda stuff, there are so many different variables. There are so many different types of K series engines. There's so many different types of transmissions that you can put to them. There's just so much to a K series. It's not just one generic, like, hey, this is one K series motor with the transmission like that. There are so many variables. So you really have to just ask yourself, what are you trying to accomplish with it? And from there, make a parts list. You know, so like if you want to go with your 500 horsepower setup, I mean, we all know, like first thing you're going to get is obviously the long block and transmission. Then you have to figure out what, you know, your goal. So 500 horsepower, you're going to have to get at least a stage 2 or 3 clutch to be able to support the torque that motor is going to put out. Once you have everything, you know, like your drivetrain assembled and ready to go in, then you know you need, you know, your motor mounts, your axles, your harness. And now it's just so easy because there's so many companies making it. All the kits, you know, like Hasport, you know, they're the number one to go to for mounts. Wiring harnesses, I mean, you can even go budget route. You know, you could get a wiring harness so cheap nowadays, again, from overseas. But, you know, there's so many companies out there that's making all these K swap parts. You can literally put together a K swap in a matter of days with, you know, minimum experience.
What about the transmission options? A stock transmission will be fine for 500, right? Or no?
Yes and no.
If you get
to a certain extent. I mean, if you're doing turbo, it's been proven that like your 5-speed manual K series transmissions hold up better. So like from the EP3. They have like a longer gear ratio and they're tougher from, this is my personal experience. Someone might say otherwise, but my personal experience, all your 5 speeds are a lot stronger and hold up than your 6-speed. The 6-speed, they just had a lot of issues even from brand new. They were recalling the transmission for second gear problems. It's crazy. They're a bit more fragile, but even now, I mean, I'll still build a turbo K series 500-600 horsepower on a stock transmission and then just run it until it goes. But there's a lot of things that will factor, you know, the reliability of it, you know, how many miles, how it was treated. There's a lot that goes into it, just like anything else in the mechanical aspect of a car.
So when you say set your goal, do you mean like horsepower or you mean like what you want to do with the car?
Both.
Okay.
Whether it be track car, street car, or both. track and street. If you're gonna autocross it, you know, depending on what you want to do. And then same thing with horsepower. Like people might say they just want like a daily or a budget, but again, you always want more and more. So you kind of got to think ahead too when you're building it. You know, right now it might just be like a little fun toy, but we all know where that's gonna go. So like I always tell people too, like, hey, if you can get away with, let's just say, I don't know, 1,000cc injectors, because that's all you need right now, instead of spending the money twice or spending it down the line and end up spending more in the long run, why not just go and get the 1650s right now, or the 22? I mean, 2200 might be overkill if you're looking for 1,000, but that's the point that I'm getting at. Like sometimes the price difference is not that much more. So kind of plan for the future too. If it's something that you plan on keeping long term, because in reality you're gonna save it in the end. You know, and I've witnessed that so many times. I'll you know, pick a specific setup now, and then I have to change everything because I didn't, you know, think about what I could have done in the future with it. So you end up spending double. You know, now you got to rip it out of the car. You got to try to put it up on Marketplace or find someone to buy it used. And a lot of people rather buy new, so they know what they're getting. So it becomes a whole big thing.
Let's say if you're building your motor, right? How do you choose what compression you want to run? Because that kind of goes along with the goals too. Like how are you choosing the right compression to use? Is that based on other factors like your turbo size, or what are you basing that off of when you choose your pistons?
There's a lot. Again, it's going to piggyback on what your goals are, but fuel has a lot to do with it. You know, if you're going to be sticking to, because not everyone has the availability like we do around our area with E85.
True.
So if you're limited and stuck with, let's just say 93, places don't even have 93. Like even here where I am now,
you don't?
You have to like 91 is your highest octane. We have 93, but you're going to be driving around looking for it. Not every gas station will have 93, opposed to, you know, lower New York, 93 is everywhere. You know, certain gas stations will even have 100 octane with Sunoco. So the fuel is a big you know, thing to consider too. So if you know, obviously if you're limited to, let's say 93, let's just use the highest pump octane. If you're limited to 93, you can't run that high of a compression. You know, you can start detonating depending on the boost or the power levels that you're making. So the fuel will take, you know, that you got to account for that. Now E85 is becoming more popular, so you can run E85 and get away with a higher compression, you know, piston. But at that point, it's like how many, not everyone can or wants to run E85 because you're still limited to the E85 pumps that you have. You know, they even have, that's why they got apps to see where's the local E85. You know, if it's a daily or a street car, you know, you want to take a trip somewhere to an event or a car show, you don't, those people don't want to be stuck looking for gas where they can stop on the way to, you know, fill up. It's just a hassle. And then, you know, I've done it myself. You're carrying around 5 gallon
the jugs,
you know, jugs in your trunk. Like, so I would say to me would be fuel. I would say fuel definitely plays a role in the compression. Turbo too, you know, the bigger the size of the turbo wheel, you know, more octane you need. Or higher compression, I should say. You need a higher compression to spool that turbo up. Lower compression, I mean, that's why even back in the DSM days, I mean, such a low compression, 7 to 8, 8 to 1. You're flooring it. You're waiting until like 5,500 RPMs just to get that turbo to, you know, start going.
That's crazy. If this is your first time doing it, right? The assumption might be, I want to run high compression because I'll make more power. Right. But is that always necessarily true?
From personal experience, I mean, I don't do much of like the, you know, the daily or typical street car stuff anymore. I try to like shoot for, I mean, nowadays, you know, you have to have a high horsepower car. You have stock cars coming out of the dealership now with 700 horsepower, you know what I mean? So like you can no longer build, quote unquote, a street car with 300 horsepower. You know, it's like, unless again you're just not, you don't care to race or who's going to line up next to you on the highway. But you know, so I would say like based off of what, you know, the stuff that I've been working on lately in the last couple of years, I would, to answer your question, I would say, you know, like the higher compression is obviously going to make more horsepower or horsepower easier.
Yeah. Do you get to a point where you're running too high of a compression where you cannot run a turbo?
From the knowledge that I know now, I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe there's people running higher. I think on turbo applications, the highest that I've seen people run right now, and this is, on methanol fuel, ethanol, I believe it's like in the 11s, in the 11 range.
Okay.
I don't think I've heard of anyone go much higher on turbo.
That's pretty high, though.
It is.
Yeah,
I mean, when we go back a couple of years, run 8-to-1 or even 9-to-1 to now, in the 11s, it's pretty high. If you told us years ago a turbo car is running 11-to-1 compression, I mean, you're going to laugh and call him stupid because it's a matter of time before he grenades it.
Right.
But, it goes back to the fuels and technology that we have. So that has changed. But, I mean, then again, like the K series, I mean, your K24 out of the TSX comes out of the box, 10-to-1 compression. So it's already high from the factory. That's why a lot of these people will just take go to JDM Engine Depot, grab a K24 off the shelf, slap it on and slap a turbo and make all this crazy horsepower. Like I mentioned, 500-600 horsepower is not unheard of. Like it's like your typical build now. It does not require much.
That's good for a street car, though.
It is. I personally think so.
So you think that range, that horsepower range is kind of like where it's like perfect street car numbers?
For a Honda, yes.
500 to 600? Something
like in that, that category, in that weight. Mm-hmm. I personally feel like from my own experience, I think like that 450, 500 wheel horsepower range is perfect. Fun. Especially for a front wheel drive. Anything more than that, I don't see you putting it down.
Even on all-wheel drive?
On an all-wheel drive, no, that's different. All-wheel drive, that's a whole different story right there.
Is there a cheap way to get into all-wheel drive? Because all right, so you kind of broke down already what you kind of need. I don't know if injectors, like you kind of explained that too, depending on what your goals are. So basically, whenever you're building a car, whatever your goals are, that's going to dictate what parts you're going to put on it. Obviously, it's kind of common sense. Yeah. But I just wanted to ask, just to be clear, maybe there's something I'm missing.
Well, I also want to put this out there too. So while we're still on that topic, find out who's in your area too, because like I know us we're overwhelmed with part out guys. Yeah. I wouldn't say overwhelmed. It's a good thing, but part out guys, like if you're trying to build a Honda, we have multiple part out guys.
Oh, Ant
Ian Y.
I'll be looking.
Sean K20.
Yeah. I'll be looking on there. I'm like, damn, I should go pick it up, man.
Listen. You go to these guys again. We're fortunate enough to have them in our area, but I know guys down in Florida that are doing part outs. Mm-hmm. They're out there. You just have to ask around and do your research. But again, if you're looking to put together a Honda and you're on a budget, trust me when I tell you that should be the first people that you're looking at, because you can buy a shell from them, a motor, a transmission, all the motor mounts, all the parts that you need to assemble it. I guarantee you, like if you go to Ant, for instance, he's doing this around the clock every day.
Literally.
All he does is part outs. He's a one-stop shop. You go to him, you'll walk out of there with basically a turnkey setup if you desire.
Literally.
So, and I'm not saying don't buy new from these manufacturers, but again, it depends on your goal, your budget, whatever you're trying to do. These part out guys are a great resource. And even me, myself, till this day, I'm still turning to them. Yeah. I'm still turning to them for parts and builds.
I don't know if he's selective, but a lot of the cars that come out of there they're pretty clean.
They are.
A lot of them. I'm not sure it's because people are going to him because they know they're going to get the best for their car. But I mean, a lot of the stuff I see up there is clean. I don't really see junk, and it's good deals.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like no one really wants to buy a junk car. Yeah, because then you know what I mean. But like, I don't know like the business technicalities of how he picks and chooses. But I mean, at some point you do have to pick and choose, because at the end of the day, when he turns around and sell these parts, he's never he might take it up and down the road. It might be good, but like at the end of the day, like you don't know how someone treated that car. So it's his reputation on the line. Mm-hmm. Something happens. He's not going to turn around and be like, well, that was so-and-so's car. There's a lot of people that do that, but he's not, him personally, he's not going to turn around and be like, well, that was so-and-so's car and it was fine. So that's it. Like, he's not going to sell you something that's going to trash.
Put his reputation in jeopardy.
Correct.
Yeah.
To him, it's not worth ruining his reputation. Just like me, when I sell something, I will sell used parts. Like right now I have used parts, selling on my Instagram story. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to jeopardize my reputation of what I got going on to screw someone over on a $500 part or $200 part. To me, it's just not worth it. And I see the same thing with him. He deals with a lot of the higher end builds. And, you know, it speaks for itself, the stuff that he be posting. And even the stuff that's, you know, might be not as great or in great condition, he'll put it right on there. He's straight up, and the price will reflect it.
So let's say if you wanted to pick up some parts from these guys, right, and you're looking for the best deal and you want to go all-wheel drive with one of your cars, what are the prices going for now? Is it expensive to go all-wheel drive with any chassis, maybe K series or?
Yeah, it is. The prices have gone up, you know, compared to what they were a couple of years ago. You know, now you got a Honda, everyone wants to go all-wheel drive. It's just, it's proven time after time. It depends. I mean, with the all-wheel drive Civics, there's different routes you could take, you know, and then it depends. If it's stock, it's obviously going to be a lot more affordable than if it's something that's built with, let's just say, a transmission, whether it's got straight cut gears or it's just got, you know, carbon synchros. You know, there's just so much that you can do to it. It's going to dictate the price. But, you know, again, the Part Out guys, they're a great resource that we have. Yeah. And, you know, somehow he's always getting these all-wheel drive cars. And then, you know, it depends. Again, like I said, there's different setups. Like the rear differential, that's what's gonna, you know, the rear diff, like you can either go CRV, that's Honda diff.
One of the most popular options,
most popular, and it's because, you know, you can pick them up at a junkyard anywhere between like $100 to $300. So, you know, you blow one up, a couple $100, you swap it out. But, you know, it comes to a certain point. Maybe for your mild street build, a CRV will be good. But once you get to a certain level, and depending on the type of, you know, racing or abuse you put into it, that's when now you got to look into the wagon rear diff. So the wagon rear, that's the one that's hard to find. And that one is the one that, like, they start. I think the cheapest I've ever seen one for sale is like $1,800. And they have, you know, high mileage, probably 180K plus. We're talking. Those Civic wagons, I mean, they're from the 80s. People ran those things. So, you know, they're coming up in price and they're getting harder to find. However, you know, some people may or may not know or seen it yet. This is the start of something new. But S1 Built, they've been onto something for, I would say they first started looking into it about 4 years ago. But they kind of pushed it off to the side, continued to do what they were doing. But now they revisited it. And I think this is going to be a big game changer for the Honda community. So it's been already put out there. So since they put it out, I'll, you know, you can talk say about it too. I'll talk about it. The Jaguar X-Type has the same gear ratio as the wagon / CRV. It's got a 253 gear ratio, so which is real short. But they are now making kits to put that Jaguar X-Type rear diff into your Honda. And those diffs, they are, again, still going to go under testing to like actually prove it. But the physics of it and, you know, the visual aspect from it, much stronger, much bigger gears even than the wagon that's already been proven on 1,500, 2,000 horsepower cars. And you can, again, go to a junkyard. Those Jaguar rear diffs are going anywhere between, I've seen them and I've already purchased, from like $200 to like 500 is the most expensive I've seen with like 30,000 miles. So if all goes well, they've done already the R&D. They've already put it on a car that's already been testing it a while back, low key. But now they're really advertising it, and they're going to start pushing that as just, you know, another option for people, you know, that are on a budget and don't want to deal with, you know, risking breaking a CRV rear diff.
That's going to be a budget option.
This is a budget option. However, it seems like the direction it's going. It's going to be an option that high horsepower cars
can use if they want to.
Can use.
Wow. So and what Jaguar is this? You said
it starts in 2002. I believe it goes to like 2008. I could be wrong, but I know it starts in 2002, and it's a Jaguar X-Type. So those rear diffs have the same gear ratio. Because talking about gear ratio, I'm not going to get too specific because I don't know the nitty gritty of it. But when you don't match gear ratios, or there's like a small hairline window that you can get away with not being 100% on point. But in an all-wheel drive car like this car here, if I was to take a rear end from, I don't know, whatever car, another, let's just say like the Ford 88.
Yeah, okay.
It's a known, they have different gear ratios.
Right.
I've already looked into it. A Ford 88, there's no one out there that will make gear ratio the same as the Honda. So if you were to take, let's just say, a Ford 88 rear diff with a 308 gear ratio, you slap it on here, that transfer case is going to shatter. You're going to completely destroy the transfer case. So if they're not perfectly in sync or very, very close, you're going to destroy stuff. So being luckily that there is another option, this Jaguar uses the same gear ratio, it'll work for us.
It's the same exact gear ratio?
Same gear ratio, 253.
That's crazy.
So they've already designed, it's in production as we speak. They made a billet cover for the Jaguar diff. So it bolts onto the Jaguar differential, and it uses the same mounting style and bolt pattern as what the CRV and the wagon has. So if you already have, let's just say, an S1 built all-wheel drive kit, you can just take that cover bolted onto the Jaguar, bolted right into their rear diff.
Damn.
So they're designing it in a way where it's, again, giving people in the community another budget option,
right?
That actually may turn out pretty good. And along with that, they're also already doing their, axles for it. So they're truly making it like another bolt-on all-wheel drive kit using that rear differential. So if you didn't know, now you know.
Damn, I'm excited. Like I'm about to have like I'm building a Honda or something like that. That's crazy. So what are the prices though for the Wagovan Civic all-wheel drive system?
For the rear differential?
Yeah, like what are they going for? You said 1,800.
So
I've
seen them as low as 1,800, and I've seen them as high as like $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 for like a rebuilt one with new bearings, LSD, Quaife diff.
I mean that's not terrible though. If you can make 1,500 on that.
I'm surprised that people are even making the power. And again, now it's no surprise. Like it's already been proven.
Yeah.
Car after car. I mean, there's so many cars running a wagon diff. It's proven. They're making a lot of power onto them. And when you look at this thing in person, you're like, how is this little pumpkin making and holding this much power? Yeah, it's tiny. It's real small. You compare it to a typical, like let's say a rear-wheel drive, independent rear differential. Like it is a baby compared to what an actual rear differential you would think in your mind is.
Yeah.
But it's holding so much power.
And then there's like the viscous coupler as well, right?
There is. The viscous coupler is in the drive shaft. So if you're running a stock CRV rear diff, you have to. So the CRV from the factory, let's start there. It has the rear diff and it's got a straight drive shaft. There is no viscous coupler in the CRV. The reason is because the CRV uses clutch packs inside, so it'll actually slip internally.
Okay.
So it does not need a viscous coupler.
Okay.
Those discs will not hold much power. So like for instance, S1 built, they have like a clutch locking plate, and now they have a locking, the unit itself where the clutch disc in, they'll already sell the whole pack that's already locked.
Okay.
Once you lock it, that'll, prevent the slippage internally, but you have to add a viscous coupler because you need that slip somewhere.
Right. Right.
The weak link was just those discs. They would just slip with low power.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, viscous coupler will go in the drive shaft. I know primarily they use the viscous and the drive shaft from like the Freelander, Range Rover Freelander, I think it is.
Okay.
So that's primarily the drive shaft they focus around.
The Wagovan didn't come with the viscous coupler?
It did.
It did. Okay.
It did, right. And that's what a lot of people use.
If you find or if you're using that.
Correct. Okay. But again, they're pricey.
They're pricey, right?
And they're old. They need to be rebuilt. And refurbished. So, the Freelander is that other secondary option. If you don't go with the Wagovan, that you can use the Freelander drive shaft. And they make all the upgraded parts. Yeah. They're using 3-inch tube now, 1310 joints. They have their own mounting brackets for it. You know, you can give them a call, you give them your measurement, and within a week, you'll have a fully done up drive shaft capable of 1,000 horsepower.
That's crazy.
So,
That's wild. I mean, at least the good thing is that they're still innovating and they're still making parts for people to keep the Honda, the Hondas running, because it gets to a point where it's kind of like the DSM. Like they're such dinosaurs. I'm sure you have a box or a ton of parts from DSMs or bolts that you've had over the years.
I've got 2 dedicated drawers in my toolbox full of random nuts and bolts and washers, and then I have a plastic tote full of bolts, washers
that you can literally put together a whole nother probably 2 cars with.
Oh yeah.
It's how it is.
Probably more.
Literally.
But yeah.
So it's cool after keeping that alive and kind of still innovating parts and kind of keep the Honda spirit going.
Yeah.
Now, you have a lot of experience putting different motors and different chassis and things like that, right?
Right.
So what are some of the things that you look at when you're looking at a chassis and you say, I want to put a K series in this, or I want to put a 4G in this? One of your popular builds was the Civic with the 4G in it.
Yep.
And that motor was in an Evo at some point, and then it went to the Civic. Now, what made you want to do that, and also what were some of the things that you looked at in order to make it happen?
So that one in specific, the Evo Swap Civic, that one actually started as a joke. It was never meant to happen. I can't even say I even considered the thought of it.
Yeah.
One night, me and my friends were together. Some fooling around and some drinks involved, and I was looking for a new project car. I was looking to do something different, and I had just picked up the hatch. I got it from Tri-State Motorsports at the time. It was just something they were like doing like part outs and stuff, and that was a running car with a single cam. I ended up buying that, and that was when like the all-wheel drive Hondas like just started. Like you just started to hear about it. That was like right after Cunha from CLM, the green, Section 8. So that was like right after that. I think this was like 2018 or 2019. I got the Civic because I heard about the all-wheel drive. And like everyone else, you hear about it, you want it. You want to do it. You want to experience it, see what it's like. So I ended up picking up the car, and I knew I wanted to do all-wheel drive. But I didn't want to follow what everyone was doing.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think of like, how can I do this all-wheel drive, but like kind of have my own little twist to it. So one of my buddies that I was with that night, Adam, he's DSM Evo head also. Right. And we were talking back and forth, and he just comes up with this random thought, like, you should Evo swap it, and I'm like, what? We're laughing. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And he was like, no, like, I'm serious. Like, you should put like an Evo motor in it or something. And, that's all-wheel drive. Why not do that? You like Hondas. You love your Mitsubishis. Put them together. Yeah. And, we're going back and forth. I'm still thinking, he's, full of it. Like, yeah, whatever. You're kind of blowing it off. It's just one of those thoughts that's like, I didn't know anyone that did it. The thought sounded crazy. It might not work. But, again, me being the one that like is willing to try something new, I told him, I was like, you know what? I was like, I'll tell you what. This is when like at the time where, Evo parts were starting to be hard to find and started going up in price. And I told him, I said, find me a swap. Find me a full swap that is affordable, that I can, it could be realistic. Yeah. And I'll do it. And sure enough, the next day he calls me up and says, yo, I got a guy in Connecticut. He's got a full swap, just came out of his 04 RS. I was like, all right, I'm here thinking that he's just toying with me. So I'm like waiting for him, like, all right, what is it? How much? What are we talking about? Told me a price. It was $3,700 for the full swap. Motor, transmission, transfer case, shifter box, cables, axles, everything I pretty much needed. To get it done. All the important stuff, wiring harness. And then I was lucky enough, the motor actually stock block, it had head studs and cams. Okay. So I was like, all right, I'm still thinking that he's BSing me, like $3,700. That's, you could hardly find a long block for that price at the time. So I said, all right, let me play along, see how far it'll go. Sure enough, he gives me an address. I grab we grab his engine hoist. I grab my truck, pack it up. I pick him up. He brings me to this big warehouse where we, the guy had all these cars. And yeah, I mean, sure enough, it was legit. Full swap, entire swap, $3,700. So now the thought became a reality. And now it's like I have the Civic on the lift and I have an Evo swap. How am I going to make this work? And is this going to work? And, little by little. So I started taking measurements. It starts with measurements.
Okay.
Let's even see if this is doable.
Right.
Let's see if it even fits. If it does fit, what modifications or what clearances do I need to make? So, once I got all that and I saw that, it would fit, one thing just leads to another. First things first is let's get the engine or the swap perfectly level, matching the car. Car's got to be completely level.
Okay.
The swap has got to be level.
Right.
So once everything was leveled out, now I'm going to check positioning.
How are you leveling the car? Using lasers, or are you just like losing an actual level, putting it on top of the car, like
in actual level?
Okay.
Yep. And actually, I'm sure there's a lot better ways to do it now, but
yeah, I'm sure people
at the time with my knowledge and based off of the equipment that I had, just a basic level.
Okay.
Leveling out the car on the lift. Adjusting the arms to kind of give it the height that it needed. So once the car was leveled, just check it with a regular level. Same thing with the motor. Put a level right on the valve cover. It's flat. Check the level of the complete swap. Once those two are level, next was positioning the transmission and the transfer case to be in line with your hubs.
Okay.
Can't have it too far forward so the axles aren't on an angle. Same thing, can't be too far back. You want to get it as perfectly straight as possible. And then you also have height. So now you're dealing with, it's got to be at a perfect height where the hood is still going to close, but you got to have the clearance for the oil pan. Obviously, this motor was never intended to be in a Civic. So we have to compensate for everything: axles, hood clearance, oil pan clearance. There's a lot that goes into it. A lot of people, like even now with the Minis, there's a lot of people that will just take an off-the-shelf Honda kit, cut and weld some brackets, weld it on, slap it in, and think it's done. There's a lot more to it that that goes into it. But anywho, going back to it, once I got everything exactly where I wanted, that's ultimately what I did. I took a K swap kit off of eBay, because again, I didn't want to spend too much money not knowing if this thing was going to work. So it was like $200. I got a knockoff motor mount kit with the brackets, and I worked off of that. I primarily used the brackets because they're just metal folded, and that's it. So I used that as a base to start, and I just built it around that. I just saw what mounts. So I used a engine mount from the Evo. It was a torque solution, so aftermarket, but based off of the actual Evo mount itself.
For the motor side?
For the motor side. I used the Evo motor mount, and it happened to be the same width as what the K series uses for the engine side.
Oh, nice.
I just had to modify and move over the bracket itself on the frame rail just to align where I needed the engine to be.
Okay.
And then from there, like I said, it's like a puzzle. Like started with the engine, got that side done, went with the transmission. Now the motor was perfectly level. And now the only thing left to do was just the rear motor mount. So there was a lot of, custom fab work to get it in there. But once I got the motor and transmission in place, now it's like, all right, let's see what else is involved. The next big hurdle was the transfer case. So if you've ever seen an Evo transfer case, the tail section actually goes up and over the rack and pinion and the subframe, opposed to like your typical Honda that's under the subframe and rack. So that right there, they collided with one another. So now it was either I ran like a Evo 4, 5, and 6 transfer case where the tail section is actually underneath, or I modify the whole steering and subframe to work with the Evo stuff. I was asking people what were their thoughts on it, like in the Evo community, between the Evo 4, 5, 6 transfer case to the Evo 8. And the Evo 8 was a better option. It's stronger. The 4, 5, and 6 transfer case is weaker. There's not as many parts readily available because everything is overseas. It's in Japan.
We didn't get that.
So it seemed like the Evo 8 was the best option, but it required a whole lot of fabrication.
Like
So,
for the frame of the car, or just the notching the frame of the car and stuff like that?
Frame, rack, and the subframe itself. So the subframe, I took an FCS race tubular subframe and modified it so the transfer case would clear. The rack and pinion, that had to get raised up. Now doing that changed the whole geometry of not only the tie rods, but also the intermediate shaft going into the steering column.
Yeah.
Also lifting it up. Now the boots were like just rubbing up against the frame rail of the Honda. So there's a lot of specifics that went into it, a lot of details that, like, even when the car was done and people saw it, they never actually got to see what it entailed because it was already done.
Right.
But there was a whole lot. Even now till today, like, I still get people like, hey, can you make me a kit for the Civic to put an Evo motor? And it's not as simple as like what I made it look like. There's a lot of custom modification onto the actual chassis that needs to happen, not just on the parts around it that are bolt on.
Wow. So it's not something that it probably, so basically it'd be a headache in order for you to come up with just a kit, just to mount the motor in there. It would not work because you have to do so many other things to make it work.
Right.
That wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah. And that was just the front end. We're not even speaking about everything in the rear, because again, going with like rear differentials, I had to run everything off the Evo. The rear diff had to match the front. So everything on that car was Evo. People at the time were thinking I was running a CRV or a wagon rear diff because of what they knew from the all-wheel drive Hondas. That wasn't the case. It was on an Evo 8 rear differential as well. Damn. So the entire drivetrain on that car was all Evo 8.
So nothing was from a Civic at all for all-wheel drive components or anything.
Just the chassis itself.
Just the chassis itself.
Just the shell. And then, but I did use, like, that's when I got connected with S1 Built.
Okay.
We, that was our first initial contact, was the all-wheel drive kit. So even though I made my own diff mount support because I was running an Evo 8 diff, I actually ran their off-the-shelf trailing arms, like the all-wheel drive trailing arms that they were selling for the, K series or B series community. So I used the same trailing arms, same lower control arms, like all the stuff that they pretty much offer off the shelf for an all-wheel drive K series, let's say. I was running the same stuff on the suspension. It was just the physical drivetrain and engine
that was from the Evo.
All from the Evo.
If anything broke or anything like that, you would just swap it over, obviously, too.
So that's where it became tricky. So luckily, I got put on with Drive Shaft Shop.
Okay.
And, as you know, they're the number one for axles, drive shafts, you name it. Like, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Luckily, I got connected with them. I told them what I was doing. They thought it was impressive and crazy at the same time. And I ended up, running their custom axles specifically for that setup. So Evo on one side, Honda on the other. So luckily, I've never, the entire 3-4 years that I've owned that car, I've never broken a drive shaft. I've never broken an axle. So it definitely held up. So as far as finding replacement parts, thankfully I never had to, but had I have broken, let's say, an axle or something, unfortunately, that's what sucks about a custom build or a swap, is that you have to have the downtime of waiting for another one to be made, because other people aren't doing it. It's not an off-the-shelf product. It's literally custom. Like, you're sending them custom measurements and specifications. So, like, it's built to order. So, unfortunately, if something did ever break, like, that's the only that's the only part that would suck about, like, a custom build.
Is that the only time you've done that? Have you,
as far as, like,
as putting a 4G in a Civic?
No. So even before that, 2008 or 9, I had a hatch, and I had a DSM.
Okay.
Kind of the same. I mean, it's 4G63, but I went, and it was front wheel drive. It wasn't all wheel drive. This was before I knew what I knew now. I did a 1G 6-bolt front wheel drive in a hatch.
EG hatch, right?
EG hatch, yep. It was an EG hatch. I ended up putting a DSM motor, front wheel drive, and it was cool. But to be honest with you, I pretty much got sick and tired of it, because at the time, it's like, all right, I didn't have no one there was no social media like that at the time. Yeah. So there was no, following this person or asking this person for anything. It's like everything is word of mouth, and it's whoever local is who you're going to go to.
True.
So my biggest thing with that car was I ran it on a Mega Squirt ECU. A lot of people probably never even heard of Mega Squirt.
Yeah, I heard of Mega Squirt, yeah.
But not that popular.
Yeah.
I guess back then it kind of was. But it allowed me to, take a swap from another car, put it in the Civic and get it running because you just made your own harness. Mm-hmm. It was like, a standalone.
Right.
I couldn't find anyone to properly tune the car. So that's what made me get rid of it because I couldn't find anyone to, and I've went to a tuner to try to tune it. It actually ran worse than how I got it there.
Is it just because of the limitations on the software or do you think it was?
I think it's just because he just wasn't familiar. He said he was good with it. He got
with Mega Squirt.
With Mega Squirt specifically. But that's what made me, not really do anything with that car because I could never get it to run correctly.
Yeah, because I've never heard of that. I know people have said back then it'd be cool to put one of those in a Civic, but I actually never saw one at all.
Yeah, no. And again, it's mainly because of social media at the time. I mean, it's not like I could not. Like now I can document it and post it up on Instagram.
And
everyone knows and
tune in.
And sees it. Yeah. But, and again, and to be honest with you, it's crazy too, because now thinking about it, when I did that in like 2008, and when my buddy initially said put an Evo motor in the Civic, like the two didn't click. Like I know what I had previously done, but trying to do that now, all-wheel drive, all these years later, like it was just weird how it played out. Again, I didn't think about that swap that I had done back then. Yeah. The engines were also, again, they're 4G63, but if you know the specifics of it, it's very different. It's oriented differently. It just is not the same. In my opinion, it's not the same. I personally think with the years and the technology, the Evo drivetrain and engine has came a long way from the DSM days. So
true. That's true.
It's definitely evolved.
With the transmission though, you mentioned before that the 6-speed isn't as good as the 5-speed. Isn't that kind of similar for the MR transmissions too?
It is. So this Evo is actually an original MR, but the MRs did have that issue. So the 6 speeds, they were glass. You put, 350 wheel, 400 pushing it was like where everyone would tell you on the forums and everything to, if you want it to last, that's like where you got to keep it. Anything more than that, you have to do a 5-speed conversion.
Actually, one of my friends, Alan, he had a SE, but he ruined his transfer. I think his transfer case went. But I used to fanboy over Evos. I used to look at them on the website because I graduated in 09. Mm-hmm. And I still vividly remember being on the internet, looking on the website when they were still selling like at the dealership.
Yep.
And that was one of the things I always like looked at. And people were like, "Oh, don't get the MR." My broke ass thinking I'm gonna get I'm gonna buy the car. I'm like, no, I'm gonna get the SE. I'm like, it was just funny because it's like the things that I imagined I would have and the things I was looking at. It's like, dude, I had no money to even fucking afford it anyways. And it's just funny because I did so much research on that car, and I never did anything with it because I could never afford it. Mm-hmm. So like there's things I know about the Evo because of the research of me thinking I was going to buy one, And
and it's unfortunate because the MR, I mean, it always comes down to personal preference, but the MR, in my opinion, is like the best model in this Evo. Like just aside everything it came with, between the interior, the wheels, the thing in the back of the roof. There was just so much that the MR offered. And then, to have to come with a transmission that is not even as strong as, the 5-speed, that was kind of a bummer. But I mean, the MR, like even till today, like if I could buy an Evo in a street trim to like either daily or have a nice street car, it'd be an MR. Are
they still going for a lot of money despite the transmission situation?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Even an Evo in general. An Evo in general, I don't, unless it's like, clapped out and high mileage, but you're not really touching a clean one below the 20s.
Damn.
Like a fairly decent one.
And I remember they were going for like 30. I think it was like 30 something when I was looking on the web. It's so weird how I remember this, but I think it was like 30,000-ish roughly. Yep. And I'm just like, damn, the prices are damn near retail almost. And then you get like a rust bucket almost.
Yep.
You got to make sure that, especially if you're buying it from where we're at in New York.
Absolutely. These Evos, they change now that they're getting up there in age, and they have a huge problem. Like anyone looking for an Evo nowadays, first thing, look at those rear chassis legs. They all rot out.
The what?
the rear frame rails.
Oh, the frame. Yeah.
The frame rails in the back, they all rot out. That's the first thing. Any Evo I look at, that's the first thing I go and look.
Okay. Anything else you look for?
As far as rot,
I know the shock tower used to be a big thing on the
DSMs. Yeah, the 2G. That was shock towers. These I've seen them rust, but not at like rot like the the second gen Eclipse. Yeah. But these, that's the first thing I go. I look underneath in the back, and then if that's good, then I start looking at the quarters, the pinch welds, your typical. But if there's rot on the Evo, it's gonna be in the back. I don't know what it is about it there. I guess it's just the way it's, the structure is. It probably just keeps all the, all the salt and dirt and everything there. But it's the first thing that goes.
You lived long enough when a car came out in your lifetime and it starts to rust in your lifetime. Now that just crazy, right? For some reason I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I remember when this car came out and we're already talking about rust on this car.
Yep.
It's crazy. Like, that's wild. For what you're paying, you're getting high mileage Evo, right?
Yeah. Nowadays, yeah.
Like, let's say if you wanted to get something that had like 30,000 miles, that's like top dollar at that point,
right? Oh yeah. You even see them like every now and then. I forgot what the last one went for, but like a lot of these, bring a trailer. Yeah. They'll have these low mileage. I think one, I forgot. I'm not even gonna say. I know it was over $100,000. It had, I think,
what?
Very, very low miles. I want to say it was a couple hundred miles.
Okay, that's brand new.
If not like 2,000 or 3,000. I know there was a couple of them recently within the past year that have sold on there for crazy money with low mileage, of course. But yeah, you're talking 6-figure car, an Evo.
Would you spend that kind of money on the Evo, knowing what they are, knowing how long you've had several, I'm sure. So like, would you spend that kind of money on the Evo?
Honestly, if you've got the money. If you've got over $100,000 to spend on an Evo, I don't think that's going to be your last dollar to your name. So, I mean, if I had that kind of crazy money and I really wanted one that bad, I suppose so. I mean, me personally, I don't think they're worth that. And that's coming from someone that has loved these cars since they, from the Fast and Furious, since they came out. Mm-hmm. What I personally know, I think like for over $100,000, I can invest my money into something better. Yeah, in my opinion. But I'm also speaking because like I'm not a fanatic for like a very low mileage car or like, I don't really care about that. The way I look at it, like a car was meant to be driven and the mileage is going to go up.
That's true.
It's going to happen.
That's true. Is there anything else you would look for in an Evo aside from that? What about the bottom of the car? Like any rust happening there that you should be concerned about?
Around us in the Northeast, yeah, you're going to get your typical surface rust. But, I mean, a good cleaning and, some undercoating, it'll...
Clean it up.
Yeah, it'll clean it up. But me specifically, like I'm looking for rot because rot is just like a whole nother level of like bodywork repair that I personally don't want to get into. Like, I'd rather I look for something clean.
Yeah.
Because the mechanical parts of it, like I'm doing it all myself.
Right.
Body work, not that I don't know how. I've done my fair share, learning from my father, but it's one thing that like, I give body people a lot of credit. I feel like a lot of people don't give them credit because they don't really see what happens behind the scenes. Body guys, I give them a lot of credit because there's a lot of time and dedication that goes into it and a lot of intensive work. And I don't feel like they get paid enough for what they do because at the end of the day, like people want to spend as least as possible. Mm-hmm. No one wants to spend $10,000 on a paint job or even can, but realistically, like nowadays, that's probably what it's going to cost to do it the right way. Absolutely. So now that's just paint work and minor body work. You start talking about rot, you're talking about cutting panels out, patching, welding, seam sealing, like there's a whole other level to that. And so me specifically, I look for something that could be as clean as possible to avoid me having to send it off to the body shop and getting work done and paint work. Like I don't want to deal with that. I'd rather spend the extra money and get something clean and just worry about the mechanical part.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's preference. There are people that I know that would rather have a perfectly sound engine and they'll do the body work. It all depends, I guess, on what connections you have or what talent you have.
Yeah. This guy, shout out to Kino, my guy Kino. He has a red Evo. And actually at Frank's shop, I don't know if you know, there was a red, well, I don't know when your Evo was there. There was a yellow Evo there, and then he has his own red one that he got painted. But I watched that car towards the end of it, like him just bringing it back to life. And it's a clean Evo, but like it's just crazy because the prices are just wild. And it seems like people, with the Evos, it seems like when they get them to that point where they restore them, everything's clean, they sell it.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Like, just keep the car, man. Just keep the car after all that work. Just keep it. It doesn't even make any sense.
That's what stopped me for a while too, because you know I was always big into the Evos. This is probably my 10th or 11th Evo now, but
damn, 10 or 11?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you had like 4, V5.
Nope.
Shit.
So
so you've sold a bunch of them.
I love them. Yeah, like I said, I don't keep stuff for like too long. You know, I'll either get tired of it or bored, or I want something different. I'll switch it up. But from the last Evo that I had, even before the blue one, I took a little break from the Evos just because, you know, I had sold the last one, and then when I wanted another one, I just couldn't touch it. Like the prices were just insane. Like I couldn't. At some point, I couldn't afford what people wanted.
Yeah.
But then the other part of it is like, I can't see myself spending this kind of money for this car that I've already owned and know what I've paid for it.
Right.
It was like an inner thing. Like I can't justify myself spending that kind of money on an Evo, you know? And as much as I love them, like I said, the Evo was my dream car.
Right.
You know, from the Too Fast, Too Furious movie dropped with the, you know, the Evo 7, like that was my dream car. I had to have it.
Yeah.
And even now till today, I mean, these cars are, you know, they're pushing some age. And even now, like I look at them and I still appreciate the car, and I love Evos. I don't it's one of those cars that I don't think I'll ever really get over, no matter how old they are. Like to me, they still have that modern, aggressive look.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's just something about them. And, you know, even with the cars today on the street or even at the track, like these things are no slouches. Like they're still keeping up.
Yeah.
You know, time has passed, but they're still out there doing their thing.
Absolutely.
You know, perfect example. Look at Rafe. Rafe is going real fast on a 4-door sedan.
RRT, right?
RRT Motorsports. Yep. And he's been a big inspiration too. Like even when I did the Evo Civic, he was the one that came on board once I got it going and, you know, figured out and I got the car running.
Yeah.
He was the one and only person that I went to get everything done. Between, you know, we've done engines, you know, he's done, but I've had him, you know, build me engines, transmissions, all for the Evo Civic. Tuning, like he was the first one to touch that car.
Damn.
You know, so he's definitely played a big role in Honda Bishi and you know, the Civic. That's what I named it.
That's pretty cool.
You know, he played a big part in that car into becoming what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, man, the love for Evos is just, they'll never go away. And every time I watch him come out to an event, whether it's a test and tune or an event, it just gets impressive every time.
Yeah. That's cool though, man. You got to have those guys who are still putting on. Were you ever a fan of, I'm sure you were a fan of Devin?
Yes, from Boosted Performance. Yeah, of course.
Was that
if
that,
you're in the Mitsubishi community and you don't know Devin, you can't call yourself, Red Demon.
I'm sure he's broke a lot of parts in that thing too.
Yeah, and a lot of records.
A lot of records. But that was a car. I'm sure like if you're into Evos, like you said,
everyone looks up to him in that car.
Yeah.
You know, if you're into the Mitsubishi community, and to be honest with you, especially now, the Mitsubishi community it's not that big. It's not that big anymore. Yeah. Like any guys that are out there, like everyone in the Mitsubishi community knows about them. Mm-hmm. You know, and of course, like Devin, like there's just no doubt about it. Like, you know, he knows what he's doing. Yeah. You know, like he's got that thing working for him, and it's proven its time, you know, time after time, it's still going rounds.
All right, guys. So we're releasing our first ever manga inspired merch drop. We have the GTR, BMW, Mustang, F-150, Street Alpha Worldwide, and the Master Mechanic inspired manga hoodie. We also have our podcast set merch on the site if you guys want to support the brand and other accessories as well. Make sure to head over to streetalpha.co or click down below in the description to get your merch today. So you had a neon SRT4. This is years ago. You had the neon, I'm assuming, right? The K20.
My very first neon was, I believe, in 2009, right before my very first Evo.
Okay.
So I had one back then, and then I had another one which is the white one that you probably seen, the all-wheel drive K Swap one that I did. So those were the two that I've personally owned. But the one back in, you know, 09, I didn't do anything crazy to it, just, you know, typical bolt-ons.
Okay. Now, with that car, that was another car. It was a cheap option for me to kind of get into turbo, right?
Yep.
What do you think it was about that car that just didn't work? Or
that didn't work?
I don't want to say didn't work. Actually, there was people racing the SRT4s back in the day.
Yeah.
But it just kind of died out. Like, why do you think that platform died out? And I'm saying this because you put a K series in it. So it's like if the motor in there, you know, was working pretty good, then you probably would have kept it.
Right. I mean, they were cool cars. I mean, to me, what attracted me and what turned me into the SRT4s was honestly, like probably like many other people, the sound.
Yeah.
That very unique, distinctive sound with the little pops and gargles that it did. And they were cool cars. Like, to me, they were like kind of like a sleeper out of the factory. Like, it looked like your regular neon, but, you know, the high-rise spoiler kind of gave it away a little bit in the front mount. But at the end of the day, you know, it was still a neon, and to me, it was pretty cool. But they only made them for the 3 years, and honestly, I think the platform, you know, Bradley is still doing his thing, so I can't say it's completely dead. And there's a couple other guys, like there's one guy, I believe his name is Matt, out of Canada. He's like the second world's fastest with the SRT4. So there are people still pushing it, but it's kind of, you know, fallen off compared to what it was. And I think it's mainly because companies and manufacturers stopped investing the time and the R&D into that platform because it was already a dying platform to begin with. You know, like they were cool in the beginning, but over the years, it started kind of phasing out. And, you know, as a business, you're going to go with what's selling, what's working, and what people are interested in. No one's going to take, I'm not going to say no one because I took the Mini Cooper and did something with it, but from a business perspective, in my opinion, it just doesn't justify your time and money to invest into something that's not popular.
Right. What were the years for that?
03 to 05. I think it was 2003, 2004, 2005 that they made. 03 to 05 was the 3 years that they produced the SRT4.
They probably saw something, or maybe they had some issues, like you said, like you were saying.
I know, like, the biggest issue that I had with that car was third gear. If you own an SRT4, you know that third gear it was always an issue. That, and I know something that a lot of people complained about was the torque steer. You know, they made more torque than horsepower, and those things were just, those things were kind of all over the road.
What about how difficult it was to work on? Like, I feel like everything was kind of tight in there, no?
It was unique. I remember having to change a clutch out on mine, and it was not like your ordinary Honda clutch swap or nothing like that. It was definitely different, you know, coming from like working on Japanese cars to now going American and trying to work on it.
That's true.
Definitely different.
Literally American. But that car kind of gave me, for some reason, import vibes. It did. I don't know. I can't explain why, but it just gave me import vibes. I'm not sure if it's because I always seen that car racing Hondas. Right. Or
well, some people might take offense to that. You know,
I'm just saying. It did. I think that, and I'm not into American cars, but like, I was genuinely looking into buying that car because they were cheap, man. I was like, I think it was like $10,000. You can get one from the dealership, not brand new, but like used, you know. And it was like an easy way to get into turbo without me having to buy a single cam or buy a Honda and then go turbo swap. Like, it was just too much. I'd rather get something from the factory already turbocharged.
No, they were cool cars.
But you ended up putting a K series in there?
I did, yeah. So I actually had a guy come to me, which ended up turning into a personal friend, Tom. He owns HDR in Jersey. So he works on SRT4s. It's all he dedicates his time into.
Oh, wow.
Yep. That's all he does is work on, builds the motors, transmissions, the cars.
Even now,
like right now as we speak, he's still.
So people are still building those.
Yep. So it's not completely, a dead, car, but
wow,
they're just not as,
popular,
talked about as like, the Hondas or, other imports. But yeah, there are people still building them, more for street. But he came to me and he said that, he was looking into doing like a K Swap SRT4. Have I ever looked into it? Because if anyone that's been following me for, the last at least 5 years, let's just say, right, knows that like I will take a swap and put it in a random car. You know, like I've done crazy swaps and builds. So like, you know, I was known for being able to, you know, do something like that. So he came to me, told me his idea. He wanted to put a K swap and an SRT4 just because of, you know, its reputation, reliability. He keeps popping, you know, the motors. So he came to me with the idea and said, can I do something with it? And I told him, yeah, you know, I could look into it, but I'm going to need a chassis. You know, I can't just come up with a mount kit or anything without actually having a physical car. It just so happens to be that he had a white SRT4 shell laying in his lot. And he told me, just let me know when and where. I'll drop the car off and let me know when it's done. So sure enough, we worked it out. We coordinated. He dropped off the car. And I designed a mount kit for it. And I started later on producing them.
Oh, nice.
So I sell now the, you know, K Swap SRT4 kits. But yeah, you know, and then we ended up working something out. So basically that car, he gave me that car at the shell in return of me making him a kit. So he wanted a kit in exchange for the shell. To me, it was a good deal.
Yeah, that works, yeah.
I like the SRT4 and I felt like he got me already into something that I already started with the whole K swap. So I was like, maybe I'll just end up building it up, you know, as a chassis to me. So that's what ended up happening. I ended up taking the that shell. I ended up making another kit, but because I'm never satisfied with what's already out there, I had to like switch it up a little bit, and I made it all-wheel drive. So I ended up doing like an all-wheel drive conversion. That was a ton of work. I'll never do another one again.
Really?
Nope, never do another one.
Was it just as bad as the Civic? Like the 4G and the Civic?
No, probably worse.
Oh, it's worse.
Yeah.
Wow.
Same aspect in the front, same thing. The rack had to be raised, the subframe had to be modified. Tunnel, plenty of clearance, but it was the rear end. So the SRT4s, if you're, you know, for those that are familiar with it, the SRT4 doesn't have a typical subframe in the rear and control arms like your, you know, typical Honda or Evo. It's like I don't even know what term they call that from the factory, but the subframe is basically attached to the spare tire well, and then there's just like 4 links that attach to the trailing arm, and then there's a hub attached to the coilover suspension.
Oh wow!
It's they probably have a term for that type of suspension it uses that I don't know off the top of my head, but it was very weird. So that rear end is what fought me a lot. I made a lot of revisions. And even now, currently, like I still own the car, and even now that rear suspension like still needs work. Like it's not 100%. So it's something that I'm gonna get to at a later date. But anyway, I ended up putting the car together, K swapped it, all-wheel drive, got it on the dyno. I think it made, I believe it was exactly 960 wheel on a K20.
That's solid, man.
Gen 2 turbo, not even a next gen. You know.
Yeah.
Simple off the shelf parts. But yeah, you know, I never got to race it down the track. I never really, not even nothing.
Okay.
The car never really hit the road, and it was, unfortunately, you know, we'll get into it, but once I crashed the Civic, I ended up parting out that car to fund Honda Beach V2 to like rebuild another Evo swap Civic. So that's kind of where that, you know, got put on hold. But like I said, I still own the chassis. I still kept a lot of parts like the axles. I still have the drive shaft, the mount kit, a lot of the specific parts that made the all-wheel drive SRT4. I still kept for like a later time. I just sold off like all the bigger parts, you know, the turbo, the wagon rear, engine, all that stuff.
Do you think that the new S1 like rear diff would be an option for that? Maybe.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think that'd probably be more.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it changes much how you mount it, but.
Nope, because like I said, that billet front cover that they're making will bolt right to the diff mount that I made. So at worst, all I have to change is just the front bar that runs across the frame rails to bolt to the rear. That would probably be the only change that I have to make. But to be honest, when when I do come out with that car again, which will be in the future, I will put a wagon diff only because of the fact that like everything is already made for the wagon. You know, the axles, the drive shaft. I don't want to have to redo all that just to put in that diff when it's already been done. You know, but if I'm starting from scratch, like if I have a new build that I'm going to all-wheel drive, that's obviously going to be the go-to route that I'm going to take if it, you know, works out.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that, man. I want to see. I don't really get to see too many SRT4s, but it's cool when you do see them. It's like, damn, it's kind of nostalgic.
Yeah,
you get to see them from back.
And I'm not shooting for anything crazy. I'm not saying I'm gonna try to go for any records. Honestly, it's just I love and enjoy doing something different, something out of the ordinary, and just having fun with it.
Is that? Would you make it would it be street car, right? Or you don't even know?
I would like it to be, and that's the route that I want to take. Like I still, regardless of the accident, like I still love a street car. Yeah, I'll take a street car with a nice build over a drag car any day. And that was one of my biggest regrets with my last Evo, the blue one. Yeah, was just going all out drag car. I stopped enjoying it. I did not enjoy it any longer. It was a dedicated trailer queen, dedicated track car. Couldn't take it out on the street. Too many parts that were just so expensive to risk taking it out on the street. Just didn't make it worth it. So I still love the street, not particular like street racing, but as you know, being able to hop in and just take it down the road, or taking it to an event or a car show. Like that to me, I truly enjoy. So the SRT4, I would like to say I would like to make it a street car, but a lot of people would say otherwise because it's got Lexan windows and a 6-point cage, so it's not your, you know, typical street car. But
right.
Yeah, I would like to take it out on the street, enjoy it, and then, you know, take it to the track to see what it runs, just like the Mini. The Mini, there's a full street car that I built, full interior, still got, you know, everything, leather seats, carpet, like you name it, everything's still there, back seats. But I took it to the track just to see what it could do, because it's something that I've always been curious, and a lot of my customers and supporters have been curious. Like, all right, you make all this power, it's cool, but what does it do? Yeah. Does it perform? You know, anyone could put an engine in anything and take it down the street and have fun. But like, you know, people want to see what you can do with it, how it can perform, and, you know, what limits do you run into? Like, those are questions that I never had for people. Yeah. You know, a lot of people buy my kit and swap their Mini, but it's like, how much information can I possibly give if I don't actually test it out and push it to its limits?
That's true.
That's what people want nowadays. You know, you can't advertise a part if you've never even tested it out for yourself to see what it could do. That wouldn't
make much sense, and it wouldn't help you. Yeah,
you know, there's only so much you're going to sell of it.
Right.
So.
Now, with this, is it the world's first, or this has been done before?
K-Swap?
Yes. Are you the first one to do a K-Swap in a Mini Cooper?
I'm not.
Okay.
So right before I did it, there was someone that did a K24 swapped Mini Cooper, same chassis, first gen. And that's kind of, in a way, what inspired me to do it. Okay. Because I know it's been done. Right. But that very first one that I did, I was the first to do it with an all-wheel drive. So the first one that I built was a K-Series all-wheel drive. So again, I wasn't the first. I was only just the first to do it all-wheel drive.
All-wheel drive. Which I'm sure is probably, for this kind of car, it's beneficial, right?
I personally think it's beneficial for any car. Yeah. You know, especially like a street car, just having the ability to, you know, have that traction at a moment's notice and just take off without worrying about wheel spin, you know? Like I spoke earlier, like that, to me, that perfect happy medium of a street car, front wheel drive, you know, 450, 500. With the all-wheel drive, now that changes. Yeah. You know, you no longer need to limit yourself to that power because of traction issues.
Right. What's the limitations on that?
With this car?
Yeah, like all-wheel drive.
So this car, I mean, these Mini Coopers in general, they're heavier in a stock form or stock trim. They're much heavier than like your EG hatch, let's just say. Okay. By a couple 100 pounds. Not too much, but a couple 100 pounds. So I believe like these first gen Mini Coopers, they have a couple different models, but like this one is R53. It comes factory supercharged. I think they're like roughly around like 2,700 pounds, 2,800 pounds. So it's, you know, it's heavier than an EG when you're comparing it, but it's still light for what it is. Right. And, you know, if you know BMW, they don't like cheap out on parts and they overbuild and very heavy. Like just the, you know, each seat in the front is like about 50, I think it's like last time I weighed, it was like 53 pounds, I think, for one seat in the front.
Damn.
So they're heavy cars.
Yeah.
You know, out of the box without doing anything to it. But so what I was getting at is the weight of it will help with the traction. You know, the more weight you take out of the car, the less traction you're going to have.
Right.
That's why a lot of these old, you know, even mainly front wheel drive Civics that you see running, they all have weight plates with excessive amount of, you know, talking 200-300 pounds just on that weight plate for traction purposes. So, you know, as far as on the street, the all-wheel drive on these cars, it's not even like really a topic of discussion. But front wheel drive, you know, again, I know people making even 800 horsepower on a front wheel drive, but you know, the reality of being able to put that down, you're kind of limited.
Right.
You know, and there's stuff you could do, tires and whatnot. I'm not even going to get into it, but, you know, I don't want people criticizing me for what I'm saying about traction, but, you know, it's a lot harder. You know, there's no debate about that.
Well, why would they criticize you?
Just because someone might say, oh, 800 horsepower, I put that down, you know. There's always going to be someone just saying something about, like, you know, trying to argue what I'm trying to say. But the reality is, you know, after a certain amount of horsepower, if you've been around cars with some horsepower, you know, traction is going to become an issue.
Yeah, especially on a car like this, too, that weighs 2,700 pounds. 100%.
Yeah.
Now, what was it about the Mini Cooper that made you want to put a K-Series in it?
So little quick, I'll touch up on a little bit on what even got me into the Mini Coopers. Couple years ago, my little brother, he ended up buying a Mini Cooper, R53, same thing, a green one. And he ended up buying it with either a blown head gasket. These things are notorious for bad engines.
Yeah.
There's no debate about that either. They're just built poorly.
What comes in these? What do you get?
So this comes with a W11. It's a motor. It's not even made by BMW. It's either made through Peugeot or some other manufacturer. I don't even remember, but it's just poor design. They have a ton of issues. And so he ended up buying one blown. I forgot the specifics, but it wasn't running. He ended up taking it apart, rebuilding it, fixing it. And right before the car was done, he ended up going to register the car because he was going to finish it that weekend. It was a Friday. On his way to motor vehicles, on his motorcycle, he ended up striking a tractor trailer and passed away.
Oh,
so after his death, the car sat at my parents' house on the lift the way he left it. And after some time, I ended up finishing the car, putting it back together. I ended up registering it, and I drove it for like a year. Got me back and forth to work. And, you know, over that course of a year, I started noticing a lot of the issues that the Mini Coopers come with.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I ended up getting rid of the car. I just sold it. At the point, financially, I couldn't keep up with it. The job that I had, I was commuting with it, and every paycheck, you know, it was going towards the car to repair and keep up with the maintenance. Just wasn't worth it, so I ended up selling it. I parted ways with the car. And then later on, I'd say maybe about like 2 years later or so, 2-3 years later down the road, I got curious about the Mini Cooper because if you've ever driven one, these cars are so much fun. They're fun as hell. They handle like crazy. And overall, you're like in an oversized go-kart. It's a really fun car. I won't take away from that. So I ended up, you know, I was watching The Italian Job, if you've ever seen that movie.
Yeah.
I watched The Italian Job one night, and, you know, that feeling of like wanting another Mini Cooper came. So at the time, I ended up finding it on Craigslist. So it was like, you know, weird that I found, you know, resorted back to Craigslist, but I ended up finding a Mini Cooper, which ended up being the first all-wheel drive K-Series one. I ended up buying that, and it came with the stock motor. I drove it back and forth. And then I want to say not even a week of ownership, the motor coming home, let go. So now I'm looking for a motor as a replacement because I just bought this car. What am I going to do? I don't even have the title. I can't even sell it. So I ended up doing research, looking for a motor. How can I replace it? What's it going to cost me? The cheapest motor I could find at the time was like $1,500 for a long block. And you know, a Mini Cooper motor, or even a motor in general, you're going to buy a junkyard motor. You're at least going to do the bare minimum maintenance on it.
Right.
You know, and these are, you know, chain motors. So without going into too much specifics, it was just it was going to cost me over $2,000 just for the engine and to do the bare minimum maintenance on it, just to put it back to having probably another problem later on down the line.
Yeah.
So at that point, I started looking at my options. What else can I do? Of course, the very first thing I think is K swap. I know it's already been done. I remember seeing this one on the forums. Let me look into it. But, being creative and just trying to do something different, again, not following someone else's path, I was like, let me see if I can, all-wheel drive swap it, do something a little bit different. And so I did, same thing, leveling out the motor. I got an all-wheel drive transmission. Let me see if it's possible. Same thing with this car. Rack and pinion has got to be moved up. The subframe has to be,
so it's not
you got to have
easy
clearance.
as
No,
either.
it's not like a true bolt-on.
Okay.
It requires a lot of modification. But, long story short, I ended up doing it. But, that's what inspired it, and that's what got me into looking at the Mini Coopers and K-swap, and it was just because of those, situations that I, ran into.
Yeah. Sorry for your loss.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's crazy. This car, the Italian Job, I completely forgot about that movie. Yeah, you said that. I'm like, damn, remember they were going through like the streets with the,
Yep.
it's crazy.
Streets and tunnels,
yeah.
train.
So you sell a kit though for this, right?
I do, yep.
Now with this kit, you still have to make the modifications on your own?
For all-wheel drive. So
Okay.
I haven't done and released all-wheel drive kits only because not and I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but not everyone can afford to do it. So for me to come out, and this kind of goes touching back on what I was just saying before, for me to come out with an all-wheel drive kit for a chassis that's not as popular, and to invest that time and money to come out with these kits to sell a handful just doesn't make sense. And anyone in manufacturing knows that the more you make of it, the cheaper it becomes.
Right.
It sounds weird, but it's the reality.
Yeah.
The more I can get and order in bulk, like as far as like, metal, wiring, like whatever it is that makes my kit, it's much cheaper to even make a profit doing it in bulk, like buying stuff in wholesale. Right. So I can't do that with all-wheel drive kits because I'm going to have thousands invested, sitting around that is not going to sell like the all-wheel drive kits for Honda's move.
Right.
You know, so the all-wheel drive kits, that's a whole nother thing. Someone that is interested in doing it, I have the resources and I can share the information.
Yeah, you have a video up on YouTube as well.
The information's out there.
Full on breakdown of, the whole kit and everything.
Right, yeah, for front-wheel drive applications. So I ended up making that video to help people out that have a Mini and don't have any experience.
Yeah.
They could watch that video, buy my kit, and literally bolt it on. So for front-wheel drive applications, it's a bolt-on kit. There's no welding involved, no cutting. It's just a bolt-on kit, and I basically walk you through the whole installation process. And that definitely, I've even had, ton of people message me and tell me like they had this Mini Cooper sitting in their backyard that has been blown up and haven't done anything. And like, good thing I came up with something, different, because now they can bring that Mini back to life and it doesn't have to sit and, end up in a junkyard one day. So it's pretty cool. And at the end of the day, like, people like something different, The all-wheel drives Civics are cool. I still do them, or even a Civic in general, but it comes to a point where it's like, it becomes so repetitive. You want to see something different. And, I've been able to offer that to people. I have Honda boys now, like people that had Civics, parted it out to take all their stuff to buy a Mini just to be different.
It's a cool swap, and I think it's very fitting for the car.
It is.
And you get a better interior than what you would get in a Civic.
Yeah, you definitely get a lot more luxury and comfort.
A luxury comfort
with the Mini.
With the Mini, yeah. So what does this car make right now as it's sitting?
So this car right now makes over 800 wheel.
Okay.
And our limiting factor is the block. Even though it is built and it is piston and rod motor, cams, the whole thing, it's still on a stock sleeve. So no CSS, no nothing, literally just stocks open deck sleeves.
Okay.
So that's our limiting factor.
Do you guys do like the, I know on the 4Gs, you guys like, you fill the blocks?
Like
cement fill, or is that a thing you guys do with the K series?
I've seen some people like do the epoxy fill or cement fill, but honestly, for like the time and money on the K series, you have companies like CSS that are proven. I mean, there's guys making 1,000 horsepower on just a CSS block, which ultimately is still a stock sleeve, but they machine a press fit guard around the sleeves to be able to handle and support that extra power. And again, there's guys making 1,000 horsepower wheel on that block, but this one specifically does not have that. It's a completely stock cast block with just pistons and rods. So that's why we're not making more power.
What block is it?
This is a K20. It's a full K20 A2 out of the RSX Type S.
Okay.
So it's a full Type S motor.
Right.
And yeah.
If you're choosing a K24 or a K20, what's your what's going to make your decision? Like what are you basing that decision off of?
That's going to go back to your goals, but me personally, I like both. I run both K24 and K20. When I have if I'm given the option, I'm personally going to choose the K24 over the K20, only because you can find them a lot easier and more affordable than like your RSX Type S. Like I can get a K24, a JDM K24 TSX motor for much cheaper than the RSX Type S. Like part out guys, I'll see the RSX Type S going between like $1,100 to $1,300 for a stock Type S long block. I can go to JDM Engine Depot, low miles with paperwork and warranty for, I mean, they used to be like $900. Now I think they're like 1,000.
Okay.
About 1,000, 1,100. That's about the going rate right now for a K24. I like the K24 because of the torque, and especially on a boosted application, it lights that turbo up. It just really comes in hard and aggressive. So I personally, again, it's a personal preference. I love the K24. I went with a K20 specifically on the Mini for two reasons. One, it keeps the all-wheel drive drivetrain a lot happier. It's not as aggressive, the torque.
Right.
And number two, because of the specific setup, that's why I say you got to know your goal and what you're trying to do. This specific setup on the Mini, I'm running a Gato 8 injector intake manifold, and the way it's leaned, it's a pretty bulky manifold, so it comes really, really, really close to the hood. The K24, I mean, the information's out there, it's pretty known, but for those that don't know, the K24 sits about like 3/4 of an inch higher than the K20.
Okay.
So now you run into clearance issues. So this one, I ended up going with the K20 for those two reasons. Now, I still put K24s all day, and that's my preferred choice in a Mini Cooper is the K24, and it'll clear. It's just specifically the intake manifold that I'm running just sits a lot higher than your other standard.
Your OEM.
OEM or like Skunk 2. Those clear no problem. Like I've even had an all-motor Mini Cooper that I did with the Skunk 2 center feed, and it cleared it no problem on a K24. Okay. It's just this specific manifold would not clear a 2.4 without, either denting or cutting out the hood, which I didn't want to do.
Now, obviously displacement helps, but do you see that people are making more on K24s than K20s?
I want to say it's both. There's no doubt that the K24 will make the power a lot easier than the K20. But the K20 is fully capable. I mean, like even going back to, Kyle, not to keep bringing him up, but Kyle up until recently was running a K20. He was going 750s on a K20 setup. So it's not like the K20 can't make the power. Yeah. There's plenty of other people that are swinging a K20 motor and going sevens.
Right.
So they make the power, they run the numbers. Ultimately, I think it's just really personal preference on, again, what route you want to take. And, in my opinion, the K20 is just a lot more forgiving on the all-wheel drive components than a K24.
And what about the head? Is the head fully built on this?
It is. It's stock port.
Okay.
But it has Ferrara valves, SuperTech valve springs, retainers, Drag Cartel 3.2 cams, L19 head studs. So the head is built, but it's still on a stock port.
Okay. So stock port. I did an episode with Dave from Head Games, and he mentioned that
not everyone needs a ported head. Yeah. I watched that.
So, but the K series head flows really well, like extremely well.
Yes,
actually. But then you have the 4Gs, which he was saying were inconsistent.
Yeah,
and I guess you can argue that they don't flow well, actually. But
yeah, I mean they don't flow as good. I mean, when you're comparing, it depends what you're comparing it to.
Right.
You comparing it to the K series, there's no comparison.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
It outflows it like not even close. You know what I mean? Like it's night and day. Like you don't need to really break it down to see the flow charts to see the difference. The K series, I mean, it's just a freak cylinder head that they built right out of the box.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's crazy.
the K series head just flows. I mean, there's like, look at Farrell. He specifically said it on your podcast, and I've seen it. It's true. Stock port over 1500 wheel. That's on the dyno. It's making more now, but you know,
that's insane, bro.
From what everyone can physically see, the dyno numbers, stock port head over 1500 wheel. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of unheard of in other platforms. You know, like even my Evo, the previous Evo, that was a 4-piston ported head. You know, it's after a certain point, like you have to go that route. Comparing
the two, K series to 4G, would you be running more boosts on the 4G?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
absolutely, and that's where the head really shines and shows in the flow. Like these K series, like let me start with the Evo. The Evo, my blue one, we made 1322 at S2F's dyno.
Wait, how much?
1322 wheel.
Damn, we got to talk about that. I'll let you after that. Yeah.
And we stopped there. I was in the car. I mean, the car, the 25.5 is fitted specifically for me.
Yeah.
Yo Solo's too tall. He's not fitting in it. So I was running the car on the dyno, and we stopped there just because it started getting, a little sketchy with that power. So we called it there. We could have, made more power on the dyno. But nowadays, like dyno numbers, everyone knows it's just for the numbers. It's just for the clout, you know?
Exactly.
And I like it too. I'm not here, knocking anyone else that does it for clout, but dyno numbers nowadays, like no one really cares so much about that. It's like you get a baseline, you go to the track, that's it. That's the number that matters. Yeah. Horsepower on the dyno don't mean nothing. But anyway, that car made 1322, and that was on 60. I think that was on like 66 pounds of boost, 67 pounds of boost.
Wow.
Still more room for more.
Okay.
But again, you're talking over 60 pounds of boost. These Hondas will make 1300 horsepower on, I'm not going to say half, but a little more than half. Like you're talking 40 something pounds of boost, you're making that same power. So that's where you really, when you're comparing the two platforms, that's where like you really see the difference in the way the two engines flow. Yeah. Now, I'm not taking away from the Evo. I mean, they make power and it's proven.
Right.
But, there are those big differences.
Yeah. Frank had said boost is a measure of restriction.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's if you're thinking in a very simple way, it does make sense.
It does.
But it doesn't mean that the motor is no good. It's just that you have to kind of compensate for that restriction. Now, you said you made 1322?
1322.
Right. Now, one of the things with the Evos is the head lifting, right? At that kind of power, or if you're especially at 60 pounds of boost.
It's a lot of,
Right. So how are you keeping the head down?
So on my specific build, and I don't know if there's anything else now other than obviously going into the 1/2-inch head stud, crossing over into that. But I personally ran the ARP 625 head studs, so they're level above your L19s.
I thought L19s were like 1/2-inch studs, no?
No, not all. So they'll make your L19s, like even for the Hondas, like this one, it threads right into the K series factory casting. Evo, same thing. They'll make it where it threads right into the factory. So at that power level on my Evo, I was still on your, OEM. I don't know if it's 12 millimeter. I believe it's 12 millimeter head stud, but I was still on your OEM spec, threads on the block. I didn't oversize them, didn't do 1/2-inch. We were on that boundary.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I never lifted a head or popped the gasket on that build. And again, it all comes down to one, your builder, two, your tuner. I will always say that. Those are your two biggest factors in keeping your thing together is the builder and the tuner.
Did you fill that block?
That was a 3/4 filled block by Rafe. Yep.
And then what about the rings? Did you
cast block still too? And that one, a lot of people know as like copper O-rings, like O-ringing your head or your block. That one was actually stainless steel.
Stainless steel.
So yeah, stainless steel O-rings. So it's like a one time, so to speak. Right. I mean, I probably pulled that head off, during like rebuilds and stuff. I used those stainless steel O-rings probably like, I want to say 3 times.
They say
without touching
that with the stainless steel, you get a better bite on the head gasket. Is that true?
I don't
it's a
know
little
the
bit of-
very specifics into that engineering, but I do know that it's proven that the stainless steel does, work a lot better. You get a better
Sealing-wise.
seal
Right.
than, and they're also thicker. I don't know if it's specifically, I've only ever seen and dealt with the stainless steel on my Evo, so I don't know if other engines or manufacturers use different sizing, but I know in comparison, like the copper O-rings is thinner than the stainless steel
Right.
that we machine into the blocks.
Are they reusable though? Once you lift the head, you have to
The stainless steel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are
I've
reusable?
reused mine like 3 times.
Okay.
I've the 3 times that I've had that motor apart for rebuilding purposes, I've never touched
You've never
the
touched it? Wow. Yeah, because the copper usually
They get
squishes,
crushed.
and then you
Yeah.
can't. You have to redo it.
Right.
But the head gasket, we're using a composite head gasket or MLS OEM.
OEM.
There's something you got some up your sleeve, bro.
No, I'm
Nothing.
That
How are you
Evo,
making that kind of power on and not having no head gasket issues?
That's the thing. The K series, same thing. OEM head gaskets just seem to work. Same thing. The two similarities between these two platforms that I say, like the Honda and the Evo, that I've seen is the cranks, the OEM cranks,
Okay.
and they just to me, from my own experience, I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many people testing different things, but OEM crank, OEM head gasket, in my opinion, is the way to go for a lot of these builds. And again, 1322 on an OEM crank and an OEM head gasket and an OEM cast block just filled. But
Yeah, but
and I'm not the only one. It's not like I just so happen to be the lucky one. I actually got shit luck. But there's a ton of people that, are proven that the stock block is still cast is fast, like Frustrate says.
Yeah.
Cast is fast. There's still plenty of people on the cast motor going fast. And, it just seems to work. The OEM crank just seems to work. They got billet cranks. At the end of the day, the power levels that we're shooting these motors at, something is eventually going to go.
Absolutely.
There's always
Yeah.
a weak link and a weak part that's going to let go. But they seem to be holding up pretty well for OEM parts, which is super crazy to think.
What are the usually common issues at that power?
I mean, I remember hearing that more back in the day, like my DSM days and early Evo days. You would hear about a lot about head lift and all that.
Yeah,
people
yeah.
blowing head gaskets. In my opinion, it's like either an assembly issue.
Okay. Maybe not like retorquing? Or
Yeah, like even like down to the very basics, like someone will assemble an engine and not clean out the ports where the head studs will
Okay.
thread into. So any engine builder will tell you if they're not clean, let's say there's some oil trapped in there, you'll get a false reading when you're torquing it down to spec, and now it becomes loose. And then once the engine heats up, now you got parts expanding.
Yeah.
It's just going to become looser. That's why even if you actually read the instructions on a lot of, like, let's say the head studs, they'll tell you during installation, once you torque it down, they want like a few heat cycles and then have you go and retorque it because of stuff expanding. Those head studs will get loose. So a lot of the times, I'm not going to say all, but a lot of the times I'm going to say it's either an installation error,
Okay.
or 2, the tuning. The tuning will play a big factor in popping gaskets too. Too much timing.
Too much. I was gonna say too much timing.
Yeah.
Do you know where these motors live at usually, like timing wise? How much timing you can run on them?
I don't. The 4Gs, I don't get too technical
tuning
into
stuff.
the tuning. That's just something that's like, I'll admit it's just out of my league. I'm never going to say never, but,
Yeah.
As of right now, I have a good support. Yo Solo, he looks out, he tunes all my cars, and, that's his lane.
Yeah.
I let him do his thing. I do everything I can on my end, and then the tuning,
Building wise.
I'll let him finish it off.
Yeah, you stay in your lane with that.
I've never, all the cars that I've brought to him, whether it be Supras, Evos, Hondas, I've brought him many different cars, different motors. I've never had one let go, pop, or nothing. The only catastrophic that I've ever had was blowing coolant, through the head gasket. and it was more so my fault because I was pushing too much boost for the type of ARP head studs that I was running. And and again, I still started the car and put it on the trailer.
Would you have 2000s?
I had the basic off the shelf ARP head studs trying to run almost 30 pounds of boost. You know, it's just one of those things that, like I said, you don't really set out a goal and get what you need for your build. But that was the only incident I've ever had, and that was unfortunately on that blue Mini Cooper, the first one that I built.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
On the K series.
I'll send you a video. Yeah, right on the dyno, just coolant all over. And again, it was from the head studs. They're just not rated for what I was trying to do with it.
So if I had a 4G and I took it to you to build it, you're telling me, and I said, hey, I got unlimited budget with this 4G63 right now. Build it to spec. You're telling me I can go on a dyno, make 1,300 horsepower, and not have any head gasket issues?
I mean, anything is possible. I can't make a promise that I can't keep, but I know from my own experience, I've built many 1,000 horsepower plus motors, and I've never had a head gasket failure.
I mean, I know I'm stressing the head gasket thing. I'm just saying that's just what I've heard.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
There could be other people's problems that they're more focused on.
Yeah. Everyone's gonna have their own experience.
Everyone's gonna have their own. Yeah.
So there's not like a specific answer to why everyone is having the same issue.
Right.
Right. Many factors that play into it.
I didn't ask you about the transmission in this. What's the transmission setup in this car?
So this transmission is CRV, like everyone uses on the K series.
Okay.
It's a CRV, but it does have PPG, like a full PPG kit.
Okay.
Including the transfer case. The only difference, so it's got straight cut gears through PPG, but this one is actually synchronized transmission. So PPG will make their dog box,
right,
which is just full blown out race car stuff. Mm-hmm. And then they have the PPG Synchro gear set, which is what I run. Because like I said, when I built this car, I knew I wanted to keep it primarily on the street.
Yeah.
And I drive it on the street. So having the synchros, it just makes it for a lot more comfort on the street.
For
it's
shifting
not
gears,
it's
not
shifting.
notchy.
It's not notchy. You don't feel like you're damaging the gear.
Yeah.
And it's much smoother for your street car. And the advantage is you can obviously it can handle a lot of power.
What are they rated to?
I don't know the specific rating because I personally always run the dog box. It just so happens for this street car I wanted to do the synchro. I mean, I know of people that are making 1,000 wheel on the PPG synchro, so they do still handle 4 digits. I don't know how much further than that or for how long. And I don't think I'll ever find out, but I know with the synchro they hold a good amount of power.
So what do they go for price wise for PPG that transmission?
I think right now, Drag Cartel I think has like the best pricing on them. They're running a sale right now. I think the PPG Synchro is about $5,100 for a 1 through 4 gear set. Not cheap.
Nah, it's pricey, man.
It's not cheap, but the way I look at it is like, how many you're gonna buy a stock Honda CRV transmission. It'll cost you about $1,000, $1,100, $900, depending on the mileage. That's about the range right now with a stock transfer case. It's only gonna hold so much power, and how many times are you gonna be swapping out that transmission before you finally, consider let me put a gear set that's gonna handle more power. Like let's just say you do 3 transmissions. That's already $3,000. A little bit more you could have now invested into a proper gear set that's gonna hold. And again, even those parts, they still break. PPG still breaks. Mm-hmm. But obviously not compared to like, a stock K-Series gear set.
The gear set.
Mm-hmm.
Is there other options as opposed to the PPG? Like cheaper options maybe?
There is. So the most popular that I've seen is a company called GearX.
Okay.
GearX makes gear sets, and they've made a couple of revisions since they first came out. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people swear by it now. They're more affordable. I don't remember last time I saw it. I think like a full gear set, I want to say was like, I think high 2s, low $3,000 for one of their gear sets. So more budget and friendly for your average, person. And again, I've heard that they handle a lot more power and they're better than when they first came out. Mm-hmm. So that's more of a budget friendly option for people is the GearX gear set. Even turbo cars are running it.
Yeah.
I think they even have, I could be wrong, don't quote me, but I believe they even have their own like, turbo gear ratio, gear set.
Damn, I'm probably going to be able to put together a whole K series swap just off this episode. So let's talk about some of the races that you've had in the past, because we didn't really touch on any of that stuff, right? And one of the biggest ones that was a big deal was the race with Frustrate.
Right.
And you've spoken about it a good amount of times, I'm sure, in the past when it happened. You may not have to go into full detail. I'm sure whatever you've discussed on you did TRC, you kind of did a whole breakdown with that. But we were talking before the episode, and you were explaining that you drove down there, which I didn't even know. I don't really know too much about the backstory of it,
right?
And how it kind of led to you driving all the way down to Florida. But you take a car like that you put so much time and money into, and then you drive it 24 hours down to Florida, and you Mac the car. It's a blessing that you're still here. You have all your limbs and everything. And you had a car that had proper safety in it as well. Now, there are people who have this thing and say a street car should not have a cage in it, right?
I've seen those comments.
Yeah. So, no one's going to force anybody to go out and, put safety equipment in their car, but it is recommended. What is your take on safety, since that accident was a big deal?
I mean, all I can say, like, to start off, obviously, I'm grateful that it did have, the safety equipment. Could I have been more prepared? Yeah, because like people know that I didn't. Well, most people knew like I didn't have a helmet. I had everything else.
I saw that. Yeah.
I didn't have a helmet on. In a way, this is debatable. I mean, one can never know for sure, but based off of me and the way the car turned out.
Yeah.
If I had a helmet, the way I sat in the car with the helmet is very close to the roof. And if you look back in the photos or videos, the roof actually caved in because I had a 10-point cage. So I didn't have like a 25.5 or something where it has the funny car cage or the halo, whatever you want to call it. So in that driver's section, in between the two bars, the center section and the front bar, it actually caved in. So had I been higher up with the helmet, it could have someone had mentioned it could have possibly tweaked my neck. Could have been a different outcome. Again, this is all hearsay. I mean, we don't know for sure because we only know the outcome that I had. But regardless, I would say the helmet was the one thing that I lacked, so to speak. But as anyone knows that races on the street, now you see it more. But back in the day, you would never hear of anyone putting on a helmet on the street. Yeah. You just... most people most tracks didn't even require a helmet up until I think like faster than a 12-second pass. Damn. Certain tracks I remember racing, going down the track without even a helmet because it just wasn't required because you weren't going that fast. So again, using that into the street, no one on the street really wore a helmet. Now you'll see it. People are, obviously taking it a little bit more serious and they'll suit up and put on a helmet. But I personally did not have a helmet. So the safety equipment that I did have in the car was in the car itself. So again, thankfully it did have a 10-point cage and it was built properly.
Okay.
I'll always say it. Shout out to KG Fabrications. He did the cage on that car, and I was very grateful after the fact. I personally, messaged him and thanked him for, doing a proper job because, trust me, I'm sure you've probably seen it. You research it, you'll see it. There are cages and then there are cages. And what I mean by that is you can have a cage in the car, but it doesn't mean that it's done properly or welded properly or penetrated properly. There's a lot that goes into it that, someone is just thinking, oh yeah, I put a cage in my car, I'm good. I've seen accidents and I've seen stuff where the car had a cage and it just ripped right off of the weld, right off the chassis. It's like the cage wasn't even there, it was non-existent. So, you do got to be careful who you go to. It's not just because someone advertised that they do cages doesn't mean they do it properly or have the experience in meeting the NHRA, specs the way it needs to be. But anyway, that cage definitely played a huge role. It did take an impact. There's no doubt about it. You look at videos and pictures that I posted, it took a mean hit from a couple of trees that I hit, but, had that cage not have been there, even on the street, because I've seen comments on your videos, you know, a cage wouldn't have saved, wouldn't have saved them or something. No one really truly knows.
Right.
However, I am a firm believer that, you know, having the cage and the proper equipment in the car is minimizing the risk of what has happened that you've seen. You know what I mean? So, of course, there are certain situations, just like when you're trying to compare it, there are some people saying that, like, you know, wear your seatbelt, but there's been incidents where people are trapped in a seatbelt and can't get out, and they die from that. So you can't really compare it, so to speak, because every situation plays out differently.
Right.
However, in a general rule of thumb, a cage, there's no doubt about that a cage is going to save your life, or at least help and minimize the risk of something happening.
I agree.
That's my take on it. You know, everyone has their own opinions, and some people rather invest that $3,000 to $5,000 on a basic cage and put it into their motor and totally ignore it. Who are we to stop them? We can only do so much. We can only tell them, like, you know, give them our advice, or even explain our experiences and kind of shed some light into them. But at the end of the day, who's going to force you to do it?
Right. No, I agree.
So
I agree 100%.
It really comes down to that person.
No one's forcing anybody, whoever's watching this, no one's forcing anybody to put any safety equipment in the car. But I feel like you should have at least something, you know. And if you don't, I'm not judging you. You know, I think it's like you said, it's a free country. We've
all ran it. I mean, again, I'm not proud of this, and even after, you know, my experience, this Mini does not have a cage. Am I proud of that? No, I'm not, you know, saying that to brag or anything. It's, you know, it's a street car. It was never intended to go to the track. It just so happened to be, I just wanted to see what it would run.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I'm not trying to justify or make excuses, but I do understand sometimes why people don't put cages. Like me specifically, this was a dedicated street car. It was never meant to go to the track. So I don't want to be tearing up the interior, drilling holes through my dash just to fit a cage for a car that I'm gonna take to the track one time or two. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, and I'm not singling anyone out, but like, you go out and buy a $100,000 M3 or whatever, and you want to go race it, you're not going to be wanting to now put holes through that car.
Yeah.
So
no, 100%.
Again, I'm not trying to justify or talk people out of it, but certain situations, like, I do understand why some people don't put cages, but then at the same token, there are some people that they know what they're getting themselves into. They know they're going to constantly race the car. They've already had a bad experience, and they still rebuild and come out with another car and don't focus on the safety. They just care about getting that number. So that's where I'll feel some type of way, because it's like you're just like being reckless with it, and you're not caring about, you know, who you're leaving behind or what.
Yeah.
How you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot that goes into it. So in a way, I get why you might not, but if you're that type of person that, you know, that's what you're going to be doing, you're going to be racing, you're going to be going to the track, and you still disregard that, then that's when it becomes like, a little bit selfish on that person's part. But again, you're free to do what you want. So like, I can only share and vent my opinion on it and my take.
Your personal experience as well. Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, it is what it is.
With that race, right? You drove 24 hours, like you said, down to Florida.
Yeah.
And, you know, that road was super sketchy. Like, I'm like, yo, why y'all racing on this road?
I know, a lot of people say that. So really quick, just so like people get some insight, because a lot of people don't even know how the hell, because it was just popped out of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah.
So there was a live. This was when the lives were like really big.
Uh-huh.
There was a live, and who was it on? I want to say, I think it was Tony's live. I could be wrong, but Tony Too Lit.
Yeah.
He hosts a lot.
He's still on live.
Yeah. So this was when that whole No Prep Dream Fest event was coming up. And Tony was on the live, and he was getting people on it. And I remember I had tapped in because people kept like tagging me in the live. And I was like, let me see what it's about. And I tune in, and it's my boy Cartoon Network. And he's on the live with Tony, and Frustrate was on there. And they were going back and forth. They were basically, Cartoon was like, you know, along the lines of like, we got whatever car Florida got or the South has got, we got something for it. You front wheel drive, we got something. You're all wheel drive, we got something. So with that, my name ended up getting brought up because I had an all wheel drive Civic. Frustrate had 2 all wheel drive Civics.
Yeah.
So he has said, oh, all wheel drive from the North. Who do you got? Who do you got that's all wheel drive from the North that's got something for me? And he was like, yo, my boy RPT. He's like, he's got an all wheel drive Civic. He's like, which one? Which one's that? And, he's telling me it's the green hatch. And then once he said with the Evo swap, he knew, what car it was.
Right.
So once he mentioned that, Frustrate being frustrated, he was like, oh, fuck that. I got that shit. That shit is nothing. He got nothing on me. I'll smoke him. His typical talk. So now I'm getting hyped and I'm like, yo, why is he talking shit? Like, he's saying mad shit and he don't even know the car. He don't know what it's capable of. I was like, whatever. It ended up letting it go. I felt some type of way. And of course I got to, represent New York and, the North.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I was like, let me reach out to this dude, see what he's about. And I reached out to Tony and I'm like, yo, what's up? I was like, Frustrate really, want to race? Like, is this really a thing? I was like, because we don't have to wait until the no prep. We don't have to wait until the no event. Because that was, I think from that live until the no prep event, I want to say it was like a couple months out.
Yeah.
It was a couple months out. I was like, why wait? I was like, is your car running right now? Is his car ready? Because I was like, we don't have to wait. Let's just get it done. I was like, let's start it off sooner. And this was at right around the time where I could not get a race. The last race that I had before Frustrate was with Kaiju, with the GTR.
Yes.
Yeah. That was my last race. And so after people seen what I did compared to him, because people already seen Kaiju racing, they knew kind of where the caliber, where he stood with the cars. Once I raced him, no one wanted to entertain it. The only people that I had entertaining was like people with like 1,700 horsepower plus GTRs. I don't sit with anything like that. My car was still a street trim. The Evo Civic Honda-bishi still had carpet, plastics, 2 seats, heat, pretty much, stock dash. I had, it was stock trim. It was, my street car. I would honestly drive it to car shows. But anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked. So with that being said, I had told him my car is ready. Let's do it now. Let's start it off early. His car is ready. Let's make it happen. Why wait? Let's meet halfway at a neutral place and let's just get it done. It'd be cool. Like let's do it for the people. Like if this is for the people and you want to give people a show, let's give them a show early. So we were going back and forth. We could never agree on meeting halfway. He was saying he was too busy, couldn't pack it up, and meet halfway, and there was no spot. So he didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I ended up letting it go. And then I was talking, to my team and I'm like, yo, how can we make this happen? And, my boy, Danny, Mandas Express, he does transporting. He's got a big double stacker with an International that a lot of people have seen. I got videos of it on my page. He said, yo, load that shit up, tell Frustrate we coming down there. And we're laughing. We're like, whatever. And he said, no, like I'm dead ass. Load the car up, tell Frustrate we're coming down there. We'll go knocking on his door. So I hit up Tony. I'm like, yo, my boy's proposing this. Can we make it happen? And he was like, let me talk to Frustrate. Let me see. So he got us on a call together. And
this is like on the phone or like FaceTime thing? Like,
I believe it was, a call.
Instagram.
It was a call through Instagram. I had told him, I said, this is what we're proposing. We're willing to load my car up and go all the way down to Florida to meet up with you. Can you make it happen? Since you couldn't do halfway, what if we come all the way? And he was like, yeah, we could make something happen. I'll let you know. Nothing. There was no, letting me know. So of course I'm chasing, I'm trying to, I was just confident, I just wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
So I pushed for it and then I kept bugging Tony. I bugged Frustrate. I started talking a little, smack. Spice it up to kind of make him feel some type of way like he came back down now. So we ended up, long story short, we made it happen. Picked the time and the location. We met up. I told him, hey, I touched down in Florida. I'm here. Let me know what day that works for you. Let's make it happen. A few days later, we're talking about it through those 2-3 days, and we try to come up with a location, and we couldn't really agree to it. He didn't really want to come to the spot that I was told that would have been good.
Yeah.
He just did not want to do it. So, I already came 20 something hours.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Go home without a race? At this point, we're already down there. So it's got to happen. So we ended up saying, you know what? Pay us the way. Send us some money. Pay for the, you don't have to pay me. Just cover the gas.
Right.
Cover the gas to transport the car the rest of the way, because there's an additional 5 hours from where we originally were.
Well, you guys were in Orlando?
We originally were in Kissimmee. Then to get to Mexico was an extra 5 hours where he wanted.
Shit.
So, Mexico, man. So an additional 5 hours, I said, that truck with that double stacker, it takes a lot of fuel.
Yeah.
So it gets 5 miles to the gallon. Let's just say that. 5 miles to the gallon.
5 miles to the gallon?
5 miles to the, because we were loaded. We also came down with other toys.
True. Damn.
So it wasn't just the Civic. So we ended up going down there, and we told them, just cover the expenses. If you're willing to do that, we'll meet you where you want. And he said, fine, no problem. Immediately, fine, no problem. Got you. Sure enough, he sold me a couple $100. I think it was $700 or $800 to cover the fuel back and forth. And we met up, and the location we were at, once I got there, I just thought it was a meetup location.
Yeah.
I'm checking it out, and we're like, this can't really be the location that, we're going to run, right? And no, yeah, right here. This is where we host a lot of shootouts and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, bro, this shit is tight. I don't know if I feel comfortable about this. And, my boys are like, yo, if you don't feel comfortable, that's it, bro. No hard feelings. We ain't going to be mad if you say we're packing it up. You know best. You know your car. It's your call. And I say, yo, we drove all this way. And that's why I tell people, when they're like, yo, you should have known better. You shouldn't have raced on that road. When you drive 24 hours for one race, for a grudge race, right? And then you drive an additional 5 hours to the spot. All right. So you're already at almost 30-hour commute. You're now going to tell me that you're going to go 30 hours back home without a race that you came for because of the spot? That would have been the smartest thing to do, or maybe try to find another spot. But there was no other spots, and that was the only time the schedule worked for me and him.
Yeah.
So that's why, regardless of how I felt, and you always follow your gut,
right?
Your intuition knows. And I knew better, but again, after all that, what are you gonna do? Go home? So I couldn't do it. I couldn't justify spending all that money and all that time coming down for nothing to go home empty-handed. So I said, you know what? I was like, let's do this. Let me make a test hit, and let me see how the car feels on this road.
Yeah.
I make a test hit. The car feels all right. But again, a test hit, 60 foot.
Yeah, you're not going to know.
You're not really getting up to much speed. I bring it back, and then I'm like, yo, I was like, I can't really tell. It's dark. Can't see the area. I was like, I need another test hit. I want to make another test hit, but this time I want to stretch it a little bit further. And again, now he's seeing what the car is doing. But I was like, I need to test it, because for me, at least I don't want to just go into the race not knowing how the car was going to react or feel there.
Was he doing test hits?
He did after.
Okay.
Yeah, he did test it too. I ended up doing test hit. I clicked second. I pushed it just a little bit, and the car felt good. It felt all right. Mm-hmm. I was like, all right, the car is ready. Now, initially, just to go back a little bit, when we went down there, the deal that we had agreed upon before I left for Florida was, he thought that my car sat better and more comparable, was more of a fair race with his all-wheel drive street Civic, the white one, the white hatch.
Right.
He thought
street car. Yeah.
He thought those two sat together. And the deal that we agreed on was I would race the street car first, and then if I beat it, then I would have to race his race car. Okay. And I thought it was fair, because if in fact my car was much faster than the white car, let's make it fair. Let me sit with the green one. But if he had beat me with the white car, we agreed that there's no race with the race car, because it's pointless.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go up against a faster car, although the faster car doesn't always win. But
that's true.
Anyway,
That's true.
So that was the deal that we agreed upon. So when we met up and we were going to race, I lined up with the white car. He wanted to do a test hit with it. And I said, fine, no problem, do a test hit. He made a test hit. He was running nitrous at the time on the car. I don't know if he still is. He was running nitrous at the time, and he ended up having like a nitrous backfire or back, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And ended up blowing his throttle body apart. The plate completely bent it.
Damn.
I might have a video of it that I could share, but he messed up the throttle body. So at that point, we spent probably the next 2 hours trying to fix it, just rig it to have our race, because that was the deal. Long story short, after like 2 hours of trying it, it just wasn't safe.
2 hours.
Yo, if you know him, he's persistent. He does not, there is no like saying no to him or stop. Like, he wanted that car to race. He was on it for 2 hours trying everything. When I tell you, I seen the sketchiest stuff being done to make that throttle body work.
I believe it.
Bro, it was to the point, this is how sketchy it was. And I'm not bashing him at all, because I would have probably done the same thing if it happened to mine and I needed a race and I was down there. It got to the point where he would start the car and it was stuck on wide open throttle, which is what he needed to race. But he would start it up and it would be on two-step going to make a test hit. So there was no letting off. His letting off was just shutting the thing off to let off the gas.
Damn.
But anyway, he made a test hit. And I just told him, I'm like, bro, this is super sketchy. Although, like, you want to risk it, like, I don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable, like, going side by side with that car. It's just, I was like, I'm already down here. I'll race the race car. It doesn't matter at this point. I'm already here. I just want to race. I was like, just park the white car. And he agreed. He ended up parking the white car up, put it in the trailer, and then he grabbed the race car. So we never seen what the white car could do with mine. But anyway, he grabbed the race car. We lined it up. And if it was low pot race. It was, people thought we were going down. It was going to be like a $50,000 race. No. Both sides did not care about the money. To us, it wasn't even about the money. It was just the respect and the fun out of it. So it was chump change. It was like a few $1,000s, nothing crazy. We line it up. We both get on launch control. Right before the light went off, he jumped. Clear jump, and it was to the point where, like, I didn't even anticipate. I didn't react. I just stood right there. He jumped. There was arguing, as always.
Yeah.
There was arguing because he didn't want to pay up because I forgot whatever he said, but they just wanted to bring the cars back since it wasn't about the money. He didn't want to pay up. Just bring it back and let's just restart. Finally, we agreed, you know what, whatever. Like, don't really care about the chump change. We're not here to hustle people like they do nowadays on the street. I was like, I just want to race. It's already late at this point. It's like in the AM at this point. It's the next day.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's just get it done and over with. So we finally get up on the two-step. We take off. We're side by side. Click second, click third. And before I mention the rest, we ended up shortening it. Once I made those test hits, we ended up shortening. It was supposed to be a quarter-mile race. He didn't feel comfortable stretching it all the way there, and neither did I after seeing that road. So we ended up bringing it back to an 1/8 mile. It was marked 1/8 mile with a flashlight going across the lane. So it was an 1/8 mile race. We both take off. At that point, I'm at top of third, and I'm starting to pull away. And all of a sudden, I start feeling like my steering wheel like kind of take over and take control. And it's my tire kind of pulling me off the lane because there's like, if I don't even know if the video will capture it, but
it's hard to tell.
It's probably hard to tell in the video, but on the edges of each lane, it kind of tapered off for, rain or whatever to just go outside of the road. And that's what pulled me in. It felt like the car was being sucked in off the road. I tried to counter it and steer to the right. However, I had to, obviously, it happened so fast, but I had to be careful because if I go too much to my right, I'm going to clip him because we were almost side by side.
Yeah.
So I try to keep it where as comfortable and as safe as I thought I could. And I corrected it, but the problem was the back tire had hit that spot off the road and it completely swung my car around. Once I felt that rear end kick out, there was no coming back from it. It was just, I tried to counter and everything. It just was not happening. And thankfully, to this day, I don't even know if his tuner ended up checking the log to see exactly what it was. But at that very moment, his car cut. Whether it was a fuel cut, boost cut, something, it cut. And thankfully, it opened up that gap enough for where when I went sideways and crossed over into his lane, onto the right lane, it completely missed him. So, again, good for whatever reason, his car cut out, but it was a blessing because had it not and we would have been side by side, I definitely would have taken him with me and the outcome could have been very different for either him and I.
Did you try to hit the brakes? Or what because it happened so fast.
I don't even know.
You just
don't even know. Damn. Bits and pieces from that night. I don't even truly remember everything. And, part of it was I hit my head. You see in the aftermath, there was some blood on my face, which we couldn't even, there's a lot of freaky stuff from that night. But there was blood on my face. We couldn't really find a cut or a gash to explain where that blood came from. So wild, literally, his wife was checking me out, inspecting, where am I cut, where am I bleeding from? But there was, I must have hit in my head either or glass that came. I don't know what it was. Still to this day, we cannot explain it. It's just very freaky. There's a lot of freaky stuff that occurred during that night in that race.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't even planned. We met up one night. It rolled into the next day. That next day of the crash happened to be my brother's birthday. There was a lot of freaky stuff that went on that night. That it was just very weird. But either way, I don't remember a lot of stuff that happened during that initial crash. But everything just happened so fast. There was really no time to plan for anything. I mean, at that point, the last log that I pulled on the car, I think was almost 150. You know what I mean? 8th mile. So it's it was too fast to even try to correct. At that point, it's it just had a mind of its own. It's whatever was going to happen, was just going to be meant to be however it took place. There was no correcting it. There was nothing I could have done to correct the fact that the car was already sideways, going sideways and then flipping. How do you correct a rollover? The car rolled over multiple times off the road, smacked a couple of trees, and that's what took the biggest hit. The rear smacked the tree, and then the passenger side. Had it been the driver, probably wouldn't be here, but thankfully it was the passenger side that took the biggest hit of all, and the car was wrecked. Car was absolutely wrecked.
Yeah, I saw that. It was the passenger side was pushed in.
Oh yeah, the passenger seat was touching the driver's seat. The roll cage, again, like I said, even a well done cage, it still took a hit. It was pushed in. The tunnel, if you looked at the car from the passenger side, you could see underneath the whole tunnel and drive shaft. There was a lot of a lot of damage to that car. It took quite of a hit.
Technically, nobody won.
So technically, I won. I got paid, and it wasn't off of a technicality, so to speak, because it's racing. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
So even if I never crashed, the fact that his car cut out, it's racing. True. Anything can happen. I still was ahead. Even if I didn't crash, I would have still won no matter what. A race is a race. But what made them pay up, he's a man of his word. He would have paid up regardless. Mm-hmm. But what I mean by paying up is they had no problem paying up, and it wasn't just because I got into an accident, they felt bad. Reviewing the footage, the back tire, my back tire, if you really slow down the GoPro that was on my car and his car, you can actually see my back tire as I first lost control. Yeah. You see my back tire kick the flashlight where it was marked at the end of the race. So I lost control at the finish line. The back tire just hit the finish line. Damn. And technically still won the race.
Right. And that money that was won didn't really replace anything on the car, because I'm sure
that money that I won, believe it or not, paid for the expenses to just come down.
Yeah.
And fuel and tolls. That's all it covered. Again, it was just a few $1,000s. It was nothing crazy.
Food and everything else, yeah.
It covered just the bare essentials, So again, that's why I tell people, they ask me, you gonna continue street racing? You gonna race? The answer is no, because honestly, I don't think there's any dollar amount there's no pot big enough that's going to make it worth my while or have me risk what I already been through. You know, my personal opinion. I mean, there's races, I'm sure you've seen it, over 100K, over 100K on the street, which is wild. I remember, you know, racing back in the day when I first started for a couple $100. You know what I mean? In the late 2000s, couple $100. We were racing for $100, $200. Now we're racing $100,000. So it's crazy. But again, me and him, specifically that race, it wasn't for the money. So we just did it just so we're not racing for free.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Neither one of us expected a total loss, but, you know, that money, it didn't cover nothing in the car.
Damn.
But I will say, and I don't know how he feels about me admitting this though, but my love for him and my respect for him came when, after the fact, he always kept checking up on me, and he offered, and I denied it probably like 10 times till I was blue in the face. I did not want it. Him and his wife gave me money to reconstruct another car, to rebuild on the Bishi. He paid for me to get another shell and to get back on my feet to rebuild a car, because the outcome, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't have to do that. I don't think I know anyone that's ever done that, but that's why, like, as much shit he talks and as frustrating it could be trying to, you know, race him, at the end of the day, dude, he has a big heart. His family has a big heart. His wife, him, like his whole crew, they're like genuine people. Like they're genuine people who actually care about the sport, and they're not doing it for the fame. He's got plenty of fame. He don't need clout.
Yeah, right.
They don't do it for the fame. They don't do it for the money. They do it because they love the sport. And I think that's what today's generation is lacking, is the love and the passion for the sport of what it is. Now, you know, not bashing anyone, but now it's more so like clout. What attention can I get? How is this going to look on social media? Like when I started out, there was no social media. You weren't going and posting up your race and getting likes and follows. There was none of that. Right. It's like whatever people came out local and knew about it, that's as far as it went. There wasn't people across state lines or the country on the opposite side of the world knowing about this big race with, you know, RPT and Frustrate. So, you know, again, nowadays, like that's also another reason, aside from the accident, why I don't care so much to street race. It's just because a lot has changed. You'll meet up and you'll spend hours, like you hear people talking about, hours and hours trying to set up stips. And then after the race, it's hours and hours trying to justify why you're not willing to pay up because of, you know, you cross, you know, this ant crossed in front of your lane, or this one, you know, we got to rewind 8 cameras just to, you know, see, did he actually jump the light, or there's too much technicalities. I miss the old days where it's like, yo, heads up race, you win, you lose, you go home and come back another day and rerun. Those days are over. It's not like that no more.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, there are some people who
still are,
but it's more private. You don't really hear about it, and when there's cameras involved, it's a whole different situation for the most part. Yeah. So, what is a plan for this car? I mean, you're obviously going to stay off the streets. We know you're not street racing anymore, right? Yeah. You're going to the track. Actually, you broke a record with this one. This is the world record holder for the world's fastest Mini Cooper now. Correct. Right.
There's a lot of, so ever since I just, like we mentioned, it broke the world record on New Year's Day. Yeah. It was a good way to come into the new year. But specifically with this car, there's a lot of, what's the proper term without sounding mean? Anyway, there's a lot of talk.
I'm curious. Okay.
There's a lot of talk of people not considering this as the world record because I'm not using the mini motor. So because I'm not using the factory motor, the pure enthusiasts, you know what I mean? Those like diehard Mini Cooper people, they don't want to count the record because the original motor wasn't used and I'm cheating with a Honda motor. The way I look at it, it's still the same exact platform as the previous record that's going down the track. There's nothing different. Everything on the chassis, all the integrity, it's still original. I did not cut anything up. I did not shave any weight off of it. Everything from the unibody to suspension, it's all Mini Cooper parts. So all Mini Cooper suspension, trailing arms, control arms, coilovers, you name it. It's all Mini Cooper stuff, all stuff that like there's no custom stuff on this that I can go and grab off the shelf if something breaks. So that was the cool part about this car, you know, between the hubs, suspension, brakes, even the brakes, calipers, it's all Mini Cooper based. So the previous world record holding Mini Cooper was a base model, so the lightest you can get, fully stripped. I think it's a 4-point cage or a 6-point. It's nothing.
There's no interior, basically.
No interior. It's all gutted. Single Kirky seat. And that's one of the main reasons why I did not, lighten this car up, was just to prove that point. Like, all right, if I do grab the record, I don't want them to say it's because it's fully stripped, it's cut up, it's this and that. You know, what the Hondas do, that's what he did. Do I understand where they're coming from? The fact that I'm, ripping out the original motor and putting in, a K series, a Honda motor, Honda powered. They're absolutely right. Like, yes, but like if I came up with an idea and made it work, why should it not count? Just because I thought outside of the box. Same thing. It's like, if this record doesn't count, then all the other records, I mean, these same people that are saying this are also like, swearing by all these, big influencers, and you don't hear them saying, well, your record doesn't count because it's Honda powered, like, again, not to like pick any one individual or like point people out, but like there's so many people like Boosted Boy Kyle, world's fastest MR2. Well, now his record actually got broken by, I think, KMP out of Canada. They have an MR2. Damn. They're actually the world record holder now, 7.3. But my point is, both those two MR2s, they're K-powered. They hold the world records. There's most recent, the biggest, female influencer, in my opinion, Amelia. She got that new 300Z platform. Yeah. That's a tube chassis, all right? Not even its original chassis, but a tube chassis with a GTR motor, making, 2,000 horsepower, they say. Went sevens, world record 300Z. So like, and again, and the list, I could keep going all night with all these record holders. So all these big influencers that these same people follow are counting their record, but you can't count a Mini Cooper record. This is a chassis that like ain't nobody really drag racing anymore. That previous record of the Mini Cooper was from 10 years ago, and they haven't even broken their own personal best.
Was that long ago?
Yeah.
I feel like, then let it go, guys.
They've held it for 10 years in the UK. And again, big respect. Yeah. Shout out to 1320 Mini. Big respect for their record. I mean, they went a 1023, I think, at like 144 or something like that. Yeah. And again, they've held the record for 10 years. And they've been trying to go faster, but they've had hiccups, whatever. But the fact is, like, the way I look at it, it's only competition. Like, if someone comes out now and breaks my record, let's just say, I'm not going to be salty about it. All that's going to make me do is go out and try to beat that now. Right. It's friendly competition. I think it's a good thing for the sport, and it's a good thing for this platform, because there are a lot of people, like I said, that they're looking at the Mini Cooper and they're building it because it's different, and it's something new and exciting. It's something different. Like it's working. You know what I mean? First time out, brand new build. I just got this car out like 2 weeks ago off the dyno. First time at the track with a bog. It went 9.9. Off the trailer.
I saw the launch.
You know what I mean? First pass. Again,
what was a 60 foot, A
1.6, which anyone that knows all-wheel drive Hondas, that is terrible.
What do they usually do? Like 1.2?
Depending on the, like how crazy. 1.3 is about your average.
Okay.
Average all-wheel drive Honda Civic right now, 1.3 60 foot. On an average. Your mild to race build. They're going as fast as 1.1. I believe Frustrate has been a 1.1. I know Pipa Tech is a 1.1 60 foot, which that's insane. Damn. But
shout out to Pipa Tech.
Yeah. they got them Florida boys got them cars working.
Too, right?
B series.
Yeah, B series.
But again, this is something new. It's getting, the way I look at it, me doing what I'm doing with the minis is just offering another platform out there for someone else to build. Not everyone wants to do a Civic. You know what I mean? So this is just offering another platform out there for people to start a new wave, and it's getting there.
Yeah.
You know, just 3 years ago, no one ever talked about Mini Cooper. Now you can't mention Mini Cooper without someone mentioning my name, you know, like, you know, it's cool. And, you know, it's not even local or just in the States. Like I have my kits, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom, Australia, like
Saudi Arabia.
my kits are
man.
worldwide. You know what I mean? There's so many people that I've been tagging and posting using my kit, and it's cool to come out with something that, you know, someone else can enjoy, not just me being selfish and just enjoying it to myself.
Right.
You know, the fact that anyone can literally purchase a kit from me and do the same thing I'm doing is pretty cool, you know?
Well, so if I wanted to, you know, let's say somebody's out there, they want to get a Mini Cooper, they want to have a...
So that's probably one of my most popular questions. And the answer to that is it really depends on the type of build you want to do.
Okay.
Typically what I tell people now is like, if you want to do a K Swap Mini, just budget yourself. I've built them as cheap as like $5K. And
well, I'm talking about with the car and everything, like from scratch.
Like buying the car and everything.
If I want to buy a car, if I want to buy a Mini Cooper and put a K series in it, how much is it going to cost me?
So here's the cool thing. These Mini Coopers, I've gotten them as cheap as like $300 with a blown motor.
The cars?
The whole complete car. If you have time and you're patient and you're waiting around for deals, I've purchased them myself. Again, I've owned a lot and I've built a lot for customers. And I don't even do this for a living or full time. But I've bought them as cheap as $300. And the most expensive one that I paid running was about $4,500 of the newer Mini that I also do. But you can get these literally for under $1,000 with a blown motor because there's so much to fix and people don't want to invest that kind of money into an older car like a Mini. You know, they're not a desirable car, so to speak. So you can get them for a couple $100. And then, like I said, on a budget, if you use these part out guys like I do for almost every build that I do, I've built them as cheap as $5,000.
So
not including the car, but again, under $1,000 you can get one of these Minis.
So $6,000 to $7,000.
Under 10, you can build a nice setup.
Under 10.
Under 10.
What's the other $4,000 or $5,000?
Like the difference?
Yeah.
Really depends on like the type of parts you use, the quality of the parts, where you're sourcing it from, the condition, whether they're new or used. So there's a lot of variables.
And that's all-wheel drive or just to have it front-wheel drive?
No, front-wheel drive.
Okay.
All-wheel drive is a whole nother budget that you got to set aside.
How much are we adding on with the all-wheel drive?
All-wheel drive, one of these Minis in a stock form, like stock transmission, stock T-case, CRV diff, with all the parts you need. This is doing it yourself because fab work is not cheap. Custom fab work is not cheap. I'm going to say like between parts and everything, you could probably do it maybe for, I'm going to say like realistically under $5,000. I'm going to say between $3,000 to $5,000.
For the additional parts to make it all-wheel drive, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, so that's why you're
saying the transmission, the drive shaft, the rear diff, the plates that you need to weld onto the factory trailing arms to accept, you know, a Honda hub for the, you know, rear spline axles. Right. So, yeah, on a budget, $3,000 to $5,000, I'm going to say.
Now, would you say that you can make this car just as fast as like a EG at the track and go 8s, 7s?
I mean, I can't say for sure I know because I haven't really seen the limitations of this chassis specifically.
Okay.
A lot of people do say, no, it can't do that great because of its wheelbase. It's a short wheelbase. So if you actually look up the specs, this Mini Cooper is actually, the wheelbase is actually longer than a CRX. The CRX actually has a shorter wheelbase than the Mini Cooper. And one would never think looking at them side by side. The Mini Cooper is just a very small car. Pictures and videos don't do it justice. You see them in person, they're really small. But the wheelbase is actually longer than CRX. And you got CRXs low 8s already. And I think there's already a 7-second CRX. So I don't know specific because I haven't tested this platform to that. But I think it does have the capability if you do an outlaw version of it, like a Civic. I do see it going 8s without a doubt. Again, bad launch on 800 wheel horsepower, it's already in the 9s. So I can see if you treat this like you're going to treat a Honda and strip it and do it all up and send it, I don't see why it can't go 8s. I think it can do 8s, and I'm confident on that.
So do you ever see yourself doing that, or are you just going to leave it the way it is and have fun with the car as a street car?
Right now, no.
Okay.
I've accomplished what I wanted to do with this car. I specifically built this specific car behind me to chase that, world record.
Right.
For those that want to count it. So now that I achieved that so easily, I want to just leave it as is and see what comes. Because from a 1023 previous record to a 99 now is not that far off. You're talking a couple of tenths.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be like, even though it's cheating, I don't want to be too selfish and like really bury that record. Because I can easily, like the car will start up and fire right now. I can easily go back, head south and get a better time with a better launch.
Yeah.
I think we fixed the launch on it, so that's not even an issue. But I want to let it be competitive. Like I want to have someone either beat it or come really close to my 99.
Yeah,
I don't want to like really, I'm not too much of an ass. You know what I mean? Like I want to at least make it fun for everyone. Like if I came out, let's just say, and ran an 8-second pass, how many Mini Cooper people, or how realistically, if the fastest record was a 1023 and it was held for 10 years, realistically speaking, it ain't gonna go down to an 8.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
especially
true.
That platform.
Yeah.
I know that platform. They're not super, like there's not that much more room for improvement in that motor. The aftermarket support like we have for the Hondas, it's not there.
Yeah.
So to keep it competitive and fair, I think where it's at, like, let me just leave it. There's no point on trying to chase. Again, it's not a track car. I didn't care. I just wanted that one number and that's it. I'm good. So I got that. So I'm gonna put it to the side. And now 2025, this Evo is coming out because I started something that I didn't finish with my last Evo.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there were some personal things that I came across and I had to sell it to, kind of get back on my feet and make sure my family was taken care of. So that's the reason why, I no longer have that Evo. But now that, everything, the family's together and everything is, settled, that's why now I got another rolling shell. And where I left off is where I'm going to pick up.
1322.
Yeah. or better. But this time it's going to have a little twist to it. It's going to be different than the last setup.
Okay.
I'll say that much. But 2025, this Evo is coming out. And, without giving too much information, there's going to be an event that's coming up that it'll be debuting itself. So we're don't think too much into it. But
knowing how you do these cars, man, like you have this stuff running in like a couple days.
Yeah,
if not a week.
What I want to do is going to take a little bit of time in my workshop at home that I'm putting up. Is they haven't broken ground on the actual shop yet. Just all the site work was done. We're just waiting for a construction date. But so that's what's going to set me back. It's too cold to work outside.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, it's going to happen. Whether I got to put on a North Face or not, like it's going to be ready for this event that I want to come out for. But right now, it's going to be longer than a couple of days only because of the circumstances. But
this event's local, right?
Yeah, somewhat. It's not too far out. But
local over here.
Like I said, I'm glad we saved that.
Too much.
I'm glad
He's just gonna pop out.
Yeah, I'm glad we saved it for like towards the end of our talk because I don't want to discuss it too much. But 2025, the Evo's coming out, so I'll be back in my, desired platform, and I want to see what I can do with it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what else you can do different from the last one.
Yeah.
I didn't really know too much about the last setup, but just obviously you made 1322, which is big power. But yeah, I mean, if you're switching something up, I'm sure it's probably for a great reason. Are we ever going to see a J Swap?
I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say I have been impressed with what people have been doing with the J Swap and getting outside of the 4 cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
I see that, coming in the future. I'm not going to say it's in the near future. Like there's a lot of stuff I want to accomplish first and, pick up on where I left off with certain things. But I can see myself doing a J, especially now it's already been talked about, but more heavily now, like the J to K
Right.
all-wheel drive. So I think that's, because the J series, it came out for a while. There was a big hype, but no one could put that torque and that power down in such a light car. So I think with that all-wheel drive advantage now,
Might be something to talk about
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
So now, out of all of the last question, because I don't think I asked you, out of all of the cars that you've driven and you've swapped a K into or you've done a 4G into, what chassis has the best motor combination? Like, what motor did you swap into a different chassis and it felt like it just belonged in there?
I'm going to say the all-wheel drive Civic, but if you're talking about like doing a swap that's unique, that, isn't as popular, I'm going to say I really enjoyed how the K Swap MR2 performs.
Okay.
And again, it's proven for a mid-engine car to already go 7.3. That's pretty damn impressive, and that proves that it works.
Yeah.
So I like the feel of that. I like the K Swap MR2s that I've done. I've had a couple. I love the feel of them. I like how the power gets put down on that mid-engine application. They're fun if you still want to whip them around a parking lot or something. So I'm going to say that. And honestly, like, as crazy as it sounds and as wild of a drive that car felt, the Evo Swap Civic Honda Bishi, that's like one of my all-time favorite, like hands down build. If I had never crashed it, it'd be sitting here right now.
Damn.
I just love that car. Like, that to me, like the way it put down that 4G power into a light hatch, like, to me, it was the best of both worlds. I love EG hatches. I love the way they look. I love the availability of the parts for them.
Yeah.
So when you have that, and now I also have the 4G63 platform into it, to me, that was like having the best of both worlds in one car at the same time.
Right.
And I just loved the way that car felt. Again, that car was a true street car up until the day it crashed. Like, again, from the full interior that we spoke about, other than the rear seats, to, like, there's photos and videos plenty of me driving that car from my house to Times Square, riding around through Times Square, driving it back home. Like, that to me was like the best. I would drive it to car shows. Like, I love that car so much because I street raced it. I went to the track and raced it. I drove to car shows, would win trophies with it. Like, I did everything that, like, so certain people will build their car specific for drag or specific for the street or specifically for car shows. I had all that incorporated into one car. So, like, that is by far the best build, in my opinion, that I've ever had. It wasn't the fastest. You know what I mean? I wasn't going mid-bottom sevens with the car. The numbers that it ran was impressive. And, obviously I could talk about it now because the car doesn't even matter. I would grudge race the car, so I didn't want people to know the times. But I remember, like, for instance, the race with Kaiju, with the GTR, that was in 28-degree weather. No prep. He prepped. I didn't. I literally stood at the line and I did a dry hop, and that was it. No prep, no nothing, no torches, no sticky substance. I literally just lined it up on the draggy, and mind you, it was turned down because it's 28 degrees. No prep on the draggy. It went 8.6.
8.6 on the draggy?
8.6 on the draggy.
No prep.
In 30-degree weather, let's just say.
Did he have something wrong with his car?
Prep.
Because that was like at least, 10 cars? It's like...
It was a good amount. I mean, the car is no slouch.
No, but do you think that car
car is fast?
No, his car is fast, but in that race, do you think something happened?
I think off the line, it wasn't 100%. It took off, but it wasn't 100%.
Okay.
And that's what gave me that great advantage.
Yeah.
But GTRs, if you know GTRs, they charge up top.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I was going to say, it looked like he was catching you, but I think you were letting off.
I let off.
Yeah.
So and that's what ruined it for me. What ruined it was someone released an up top video because I had a hood exit. So from the starting line, you kind of, the sound starts fading away. From up top, someone released a video and you hear the car clear as day. At like, before the quarter, I think at like 1,000 foot, I let off.
Yeah.
And I dumped it in neutral and let it coast because once I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw how far away he was. No point on me continuing to push the car on the street. At that point, we're already 170 plus.
Yeah.
So I let off and the car still, it was either A6 or A7. Now I think it was, I think it was an 873 now that I think about it, to be specific. 873 letting off at the 1,000 foot, coasting it.
Damn.
And that's what ruined any future races. And that's when I only started getting shop GTR cars calling me out.
Like workhorse? Did workhorse call you out? Because they were big into the street stuff. Like 2 years ago.
I want to say yes. There was DMs exchanged, but I don't remember if it was before or after the race with Kaiju. I'm not 100% sure, but I know one was a GTR, I think from the Bronx, and what was the
purple GTR? Yeah.
Tech-R
the purple
car,
GTR, right?
Right-hand drive king.
Okay.
Is it right-hand drive? Yeah, right-hand drive king. He tried to call me out.
What's what car?
GTR.
Oh, okay. Damn.
Right-hand drive king had a GTR at that time. I don't know if he still has it.
That's all you could get. Is
And,
GTRs, huh?
and they try to hustle me. That's the other part about street racing. They try to hustle me, telling me that the car didn't make that much power. But he forgets that when I was at Felix's shop, I seen the 1700 wheel on the dyno when the car was there.
Damn.
So again, that's when it started not becoming fun, because now it was just a straight hustle because they seen what the car did and what the car has been doing on the street. But it took that race with the GTR and Kaiju for them to really see where the car was at.
Damn. And that race was after Angie's race? The
Yes.
Evo?
Yeah.
Okay. And you guys never ran it back?
We raced twice. So I raced Angie's Evo the first time. And the first time was when I had hit the track for the first time with the Civic. And I hit the track, came right out, fresh out of the track. And I figured, all right, car's going on the street. Let me lower the two-step. Street's not going to hook like the track.
Yeah.
Little did I know it was the same, if not better, than the track on the spot we were at. And my two-step was set too low. The car bogged. So he just took off.
Right.
There was no catching him. So I asked for a rerun. We ended up setting another time to rerun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we went heads up on his turf. And then that's when I, won that race. So me and him got it off. Kaiju, we lined up twice. The first time we got busted at the line. So that never happened that night. And then running, I ended up cracking my oil pan. So game over that night. But we ended up coming home. It was fixed by the next day.
Yeah.
And then that's when, I called them back out and we went to another location and then we got the race off. But Kaiju was the last race other than Frustrate. No one else wanted to take the race. And trust me when I tell you, there's paper trails for anyone that's trying to deny this or anything. There's many famous people or known people that I've called out. It's not like I was singling, individuals out. I was calling out whoever that sat with me.
Yeah.
And there's many proof of it. And it all got turned down or excuses or whatever. So, that people knew what that car did and what it was capable of. And that's why I loved it so much, because I did everything with that car. And, it was unfortunate what happened, but it is what it is.
Well, like I said earlier, that's a blessing that you're here and you're alive and you have wheels. Sure. That's what's more important,
Absolutely. Cars can be rebuildable and new cars can be built.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we definitely look forward to seeing this car at the track. I want to see it. And it's weird because I never really see a lot of the guests I interview run their cars after the episodes. It's kind of strange, honestly. But yeah, hopefully I can see this car run and see. I'm curious to see what you're going to do with it.
Yep.
He might put a J Swap in here, he said. And then and then the Mini Cooper, hopefully you keep it, You have this history of selling cars and maybe getting back into it. But I think you should hold on to it for a while and keep inspiring people to keep doing this swap.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, parts are not cheap anymore. Builds are not cheap, especially the caliber I want to build it to. So, people ask me all the time, oh, why'd you sell it? Why'd you do this? Honestly, like, I sell them mainly because it helps fund the next build and the next project. I'm not made out of money, so I don't have all this income coming in. So to build a car like this, you're not talking 10, 20, 30 grand. So, unfortunately, some cars have to get either sold or parted out to be able to fund the next, big thing. So, if I have to, I mean, it is what it is. It's not like I can't build another one. I built so many.
Yeah.
So, we'll see where it goes. But as of right now, again, I did what I had to do with the Mini. Now my focus is the Evo for the upcoming season.
Well, we look forward to seeing the Evo and a lot of your other setups that you're going to have in the future. But yeah, I appreciate your time, man. It's been like 3 hours and something, but it was a great conversation.
Yeah,
like,
likewise.
I was like, damn, okay, we flown here. A lot of clips, a lot of information too. I know we spoke before we started, and I was like, hopefully, we can get some information out there. But yeah, this is an informative episode for sure. Definitely gonna have to watch this back a couple times to put some notes in for my K series in the future.
Yeah, if we go into like any more detail than I did, which I consider that the basic stuff, but we'll extend this video like double or triple the length. So,
but if you guys have any questions and you guys do want to get those details, you are able to reach out to RPT. Where at?
Yep, Instagram RPT _creations. Same thing for the YouTube. I mean, I'm not big onto the YouTube, other than the little videos, the tutorials that I have. But RPT Creations on both platforms.
You only have one page?
One page. That's
okay. Did you change the name?
When I first opened up and started that Instagram account, it was called 4G63 Powered. Okay. Powered was abbreviated. But yeah, once I got into the small business that I run on the side, I named it RPT. Named it after my brother. That was his initials, RPT. So anyone wondering, RPT was his initials, and the creations were all inspired, through him because of him. So that was the name I came up with and changed it and just kept it since.
I'm surprised I didn't ask that in the beginning. I always forget to ask that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. You don't something you don't think about.
Yeah, but sometimes some of the names are people are like, oh, I wonder what that means.
Yep.
But yeah, man, I appreciate your time, bro, and thank you for for making this happen. Kind of last minute, honestly, but we've been talking for a while, so I'm glad that we were finally able to make this happen. It was definitely worth it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you accommodating, making the time to take the trip up here.
Yeah, I was chilling, man. I was chilling, and I got here early too. I was just like, I'm just chill, hang out, and just take care of some emails and some stuff. So
no, it's cool. It's like I told you, to make it quick. One thing I always enjoyed about this podcast in particular was getting the background and the backstory of people's personal experience and how they got into it. So I like documentaries. I like watching a lot of the people that come on. So it's definitely a great movement that you got going on. And
thank you.
Definitely appreciate you investing the time into bringing people's stories out there. It's pretty dope.
And it will continue. It will continue for sure.
Yeah.
So thanks again, man. I really appreciate it.
For
those who are listening and watching, if you're watching the premiere right now, make sure you hit that like button. Also, make sure you sub. Also, make sure you cop some merch. I think it's down below here or either over here somewhere. Hit that button and shop, or go to streetalpha.co to get your merch, t-shirts, whatever it is, all accessories, Street Alpha. And if you guys are on audio side, make sure you guys keep listening on all streaming platforms, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, we're everywhere. So until next time, guys, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Thank you.